ladies and gents, back to 2.5 Talent. We are back. I think it's been a good 2-3 weeks since we all last streaming live on air, whatever you want to call it. But thank you for joining us once again. Myself, Naokai, alongside that pardon, alongside Trav CS, back from the episode, talking about everything that's happened over the last 2-3 weeks, roughly. I think last time we checked in, it was just prior to Kato starting, and now Kato's finished. EPL Group A is finished. We've had a myriad of transfers. The RMR open and closed calls are finished as well. So we've had a lot of shit's happened. So, let's get the show on the road. Before we, get into all the details, lads, how have you been? What have you been up to?
Not much. Honestly, it's just been really nice to watch Kato. It was a really well done event. I'm happy that the best teams arrived at the playoffs as we were hoping for. And obviously the open qualifier, closed qualifier, the three of us have interspersed streams across the last few weeks, and it's been honestly super awesome to see the teams that we're gonna have in the RMR. So yeah, I think that's been awesome. ECL has been struggling along. Things have been good.
Trav?
Yeah. And I've won some of the European Development Championship, which has been pretty fun. I did 2 days of playoffs of that one, which was pretty enjoyable. And that, all online CS right now is an absolute sort of myriad of occasional forfeits and issues with scheduling and stuff like that. So a couple of games which were moved and forfeited, unfortunately. And even today, I think in a qualifier for the Blast qualifier that I think you're doing, Neo, I think that I believe there was a game just today that I just saw on HLTV. iNation had to forfeit a game against Monty on the final lap. When they were 2 rounds apiece because Voivoda didn't want to, push their game back. So, just online CS is a bit of a mess. But yeah, it's at the moment we battle through it, and it gives us opportunities to cast some of this stuff. So it's always enjoyable.
Exactly that. And I guess for me, did a bit of ECL, then the odd game here and there, a bit of Asia, a bit of EU as well here and there. What else? I'm looking at the calendar. I did, of course, Blast, as you mentioned. I did Blast South America, which is absolutely fucked my sleep schedule. I was finishing at 3-4 a.m. every night, and I literally had, not yesterday, the day before, I couldn't sleep until 6 a.m. just because I was just wide awake, because I had insomnia basically, because my sleep schedule was all over the place. But some good Counter-Strike. Imperial ended up winning that one, which is pretty good. Sort of expected they were the number 1 seed, but overall it was actually quite a good few days. All the favorites basically won pretty much all the way through, but it actually was still quite interesting, and it was quite hotly contested. Fluxo looked good, 9Z looked good as well, even Corinthians. Actually, I didn't expect anything out of them, but they actually looked relatively competent. So all in all, was all right. And then basically since then it's just been bits and bobs, bit of EU ECL, bit of Blast, and IEM Rio as well, quals, which is always good to kind of be involved with, because those IEM those quals are good. Asia did EU and South America, so the whole lot.
And then I was on an A. So
hey, there we go. Exactly. We completed it, like the Infinity Gauntlet. So yeah, no, not bad. But what we can do, we can get straight underway into towards kind of the talking points. I think we're going to start off with transfers. Probably the best thing to start off with. We've got a few pretty good ones to have a couple of conversations about, to get straight into it. Let's start with Sprout, because there's a lot to talk about over towards Sprout. It's a messy time over in the Sprout camp. Arguably seen as, maybe 2-3 months ago, the best team in tier 2, quote unquote, if you even class them as tier 2, or some of you class them higher. You have kind of distinguish what is tier 2, what is tier 1. But in my opinion, I always went as them as the best team in tier 2. And now they're most definitely not. Who wants to pick up this one first?
Honestly, I am just bummed that we've had this fall from grace for Sprout, because I have to give credit to their management that they've made a lot of really good scouting decisions. They played the market really well. As soon as Copenhagen Flames was disintegrating, I feel like at the point in which they bought the piece that they did in Xiphon, I thought it might have been the best one to take out of the whole bunch, because at the time he looked just the most impressive and the most mechanically skilled. And then you honestly managed to get away with Murder picking up Refresh, I'm assuming for pretty cheap, just because of him being dropped from Heroic and whatnot. And then again, the op transfer for Zello made sense on paper, just to upgrade off of Slacks. That felt like the only downgrade that they really had. And it felt like, I mean, we were going to go into Kato. They would have made probably a deep run. I was thinking that they would start to take some scalps off some tier 1 teams. And
Yeah.
it just all kind of collapsed. We had that interview from Refresh saying that he didn't want to IGL anymore. And ever since that interview, I feel like everything has just been on an absolute downward trajectory. They started. I think they brought back in Zyphon, and Refresh played in different spots, and then they brought in Barry after. Actually, no, they brought in Maze to IGL
yeah.
for trialing, and after
For
like
2 days,
2 or
by the
3,
way.
yeah,
Literally 2 days for the IEM Rio quals,
yeah.
and then they just bin him off after that. I mean, like, that is not enough time to trial an IGL. I don't care.
I know. And then you bring back in Barry. And look, I have mad respect to the kind of historical value that he's had, and he's nurtured a lot of really good players on the Sprout roster, but he should not be in the server playing, just because there are many more young talents out there that he could definitely try to mold. And I wish it could have been Maze. At least that would have been a start.
Yeah.
But now Refresh is out the door, and it makes me really upset that this guy finally voices his opinions about something. Tries his best to try to fit in the roles, and not playing actually under a proper IGL, it's gonna tank your stats. It's just undeniable. So I'm bummed out mostly for Refresh, just because I felt like he could have still made things happen with this roster if they had gotten another IGL. But now I feel like both parties are kind of just screwed. Like, you still have Barry on the roster. Yeah, sure, you got Zyphon back. We still have Barry in the roster, and now Refresh is out of the team too. So I don't think anybody wins here.
No. Trav, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just upset as Paladin, so let's kind of echo his thoughts. I'm actually quite upset for Zello because famously for so long he was, insistent on staying on the Nexus team where he sort of played for, I think, a borderline even more than 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. He was on that Nexus team. He was always hard carrying them. He never wanted to look for an upgrade. And because he was so comfortable just talking with his countrymen and playing with his countrymen, finally he gets this opportunity after a small little period in ecstatic, of course. Go to a team like Sprout, and he's moved from that beautiful, sort of comfortable home into an absolute mess. And that's exactly the thing he wouldn't have wanted to do. It's why he avoided it for so long. And guess what? It's only gone and happened, and it is a big shame. I feel bad for them. I think Refresh, obviously, in his tweet longer that I think he put out when he was kicked, of course, or he decided to step down.
Yeah.
He did say that he has an issue with a stammer, which I think is fair play to admit that. Like, if you can't IGL, if you can't get your words out in the heat of the moment, fair play to him. But yeah, I mean, as Paladin said, Berry playing, I mean, he'll be the first to admit that Berry he should not be playing in this team. Bringing Zyphon back, obviously, that's the reason he got dropped in the first place, was because apparently of his tilt issues. That was seen, from first-hand perspective and with your own eyes when you watched him at Kato and various other events like that. So, you can see that he's a bit of a tilter, but now this has happened to him. I hope for his sake that he sorts himself out. That's okay. This is a lucky break for me. This is now a good chance to get back into this team and start carrying again, and then see where we go from there. And of course, there are rumors out there, not necessarily confirmed rumors. It's a very random tweet, of course, that we have seen.
I'm just gonna say,
there is a chance.
Yeah, just quickly about this, just very quickly about this rumor you're about to bring up. Take this with a massive grain of salt, because this Twitter is always wrong. They are making this up on the fly.
Let's just say it's a theory craft.
It's
right?
a theory craft,
if it happened, right?
This person's not reputable in the slightest. I promise you this. I've seen so many of their transfers they put up, and they'll just delete them as well because they're wrong. But this person just gets 93% of the stuff wrong, and the stuff that they do get right, it's just taken from reputable sources. For example, I'm pretty sure these guys were the ones who they took my tweet of the Godsent roster and then claimed it out. Basically, the only reason they even put that out is because they'd seen the ESEA page, or they'll take AB Overdrive's tweets and then do their own version of it. Don't believe what they're saying unless someone else reputable has tweeted it, because they've got so much shit wrong. So just massive grain of salt here before, and then Trav, carry on. But just before people get, people run away with a rumor like this, essentially, is what I'm trying to say.
It obviously is very, very random, but I do think that it would be a great call if they do go for Snacks, because recently he's been picking up the IGL role on his mixed team, Let Us Cook. And let's Cook have had some genuinely decent results at sort of like, play-in level for like CCT events and stuff like that. I mean, they beat Anonymo, I'm pretty sure, and that in the end kind of caused Anonymo to disband. Because they're now gone. Yeah. And he's been playing with Bialy, which obviously not for us old boys like me and Paladin, we're old VP fans. To see him play with Bialy was a really cool factor. And actually, the first game that Bialy did play, I casted a little bit of that. And Bialy was absolutely running riot. I mean, I think he had like 66 kills in his best in a long BO3. Fair. Isn't like hugely impressive, but I'm pretty sure his headshot rate was like 44 headshots out of 66 kills. Like he was hitting heads, which is great to see for him. And of course, Snax and Bialy famously, they were always the two younger VP members that were said, okay, well after Pasha, Neo, and Taz move on, Snax and Bialy are going to have a bit of history, a bit of future, I should say. To still play on, and I think that would be really cool. However, if Snax, of course, does leave, then that project is kind of dead. Sound has been looking really good on that project, so keep an eye on him too, I will say. But if Snax does go to Sprout, I actually do think it would be a nice call.
Yeah, I mean, to just go back to the Sprouts, though, I got to say that I feel bad for Refresh. I feel like he's getting scapegoated quite a bit here. I feel like he actually... Like, obviously, they need an IGL, right? But it's kind of like, we know he's actually pretty proficient as a rifler, especially in Tier 2. He was competing relatively okay in Tier 1. So I kind of feel like if he just had him in standard rifle roles, he would be fine anyway. But if Zyphon's the problem because he's tilting, I think there's obviously some sort of issue to do with like team synergy. I think, obviously we can probably say this that Lauren X and Zella have a very good, decent connection, but then, probably maybe Stare and Refresh on Zyphon maybe, but like all together, it's obviously not working. Burying the server's not going to help at all. They need an IGL. I find it funny as well that Snax is the first rumor that's come out since, because they went to Let Us Cook and were like, right, who's your IGL? Maze. Okay, sure. Let's get this guy a go. 2 days later, like, well, fuck this. He was shit. So they go back to Let Us Cook and like, right, second option. Who is mid-round calling? Snax? Okay, sure. We'll give you a go, mate. Like, the main caller wasn't working. We need the mid-round calling then. So, yeah, I find that funny.
Of course, the worst part, of course, is that HLTV have added the CS:GO transfers like feature you can see on the right hand side of the homepage, and literally like the last two were Maze to Sprout, and then Maze to Sprout bench, because obviously that's the way it looks, and it's like obviously it's not a bench, it was only a trial. They don't have trial in their system yet, but obviously it looked kind of amusing.
It all especially 2 days. I know like Sponge the tweet was like life can come at you fast kind of thing, and it was like Let Us Cook to Sprout to bench, or just all over the place. But I gotta feel bad for me because I've heard a lot of good things about him as a player. Like generally a lot of people have said like in terms of best up and coming IGLs, he always gets thrown in that conversation, like from the more regional people, like over in Denmark, they throw his name out there all the time. So I got to feel, but I think one thing you were mentioning about Zyphon earlier, which I agree with, is that in terms of that old Copenhagen Flames roster, he was the one who seemed like he had the most potential. And Dvorborg actually said this when I spoke to him.
Nico Odol said it too.
Yeah.
He said Zyphon's the most talented from that team.
And I think as long as he just fixes his attitude, he should be all right. But from what I heard, it was pretty bad. He was very, he got tilted very badly. And he to the point where he would get tilted and he would either rage, or the other side rage wouldn't give info. So obviously they would just lose games because he could shoot one guy not getting info, not doing what he's meant to be doing because he's just full tilt. And obviously you can't have that. But it's unbelievable fall from grace for these guys who have gone from being basically the team to beat in Tier 2, alongside the likes of like Copenhagen Flames or whatnot, but arguably seen in a slightly better light. Because, I mean, there's debates on what you class as Tier 1 and Tier 2, essentially. Like I always kind of like to go in between, say Tier 1.5, and I would say Sprout a Tier 1.5. The same with B&E a Tier 1.5. They're not really a Tier 1 team, but they're definitely not a Tier 2 team. So I see Sprout a Tier 1.5, but they were up there in those conversations. So, conference when we worked together, Annie, they should have won that, and they lost to FTW in that final game. This conference,
in the final, right? It was like
final game,
the first round of the lower bracket. Like they just went out immediately, which is just astounding.
They were first or second team to go out or something. It was like ridiculous along those lines.
And we had done pre-shows, and all of us.
I put my name on the line for them. Yeah. People were saying like, everyone else went to safe picks, and I was like, nah, Sprout. Trust me, these guys are the fuck. They're so good.
Yeah, we did the same for ours as well.
Yeah.
For Valencia as well.
Exactly
the
same thing. They bombed out to endpoint.
Bombed out of conference again, right? And then even since then, obviously they had Maze for the IEM Rios. Didn't do well in that. They just were not competitive. The couple of games, I think we caught on the mainstream, we caught one of their games, and they were not good. And then the other game, on the B stream or whatever, they had like such bad tech issues. I don't actually know what the problem was, but their game was delayed by like 80 minutes, something ridiculous like that. So I think they were some sort of problems with the ESEA client, which a lot of the Polish players actually did. All the Polish players in the game I was doing,
Yeah.
I can't remember what game it was, but it was a game. I know that 6 out of 10 players were Polish. It was like 9 versus someone else was like 1 Polish guy on the team. Ents, yes, it was. It was Ents versus Honorus. That's what it was. Ents versus Honorus. Honorus upset them. I was in that game. In that game, all the Polish players in my one got some problems. So apparently something to do with the ESA client. But on the topic was they brought in Maze, bomb out of IEM Rio. Yeah, everything's all over the place for them. And realistically, let's be honest, they're not going to do well on anything else. I don't think they'll do well in Challenger League. I think they're actually in the lower bracket already, I'm pretty sure. I don't know how they'll do in the likes of, what is it, the Dallas quals? I don't even know if they're even in that. They already got, we'll come back to that a little bit later with like Melbourne and Dallas a little bit later. I think they got invites to Melbourne maybe. But
yeah,
they've got to fix up before then. I know there's a bit of time until then. But it's a rough position for them to be in, it's safe to say. So who knows what's going on.
They're going to get overtaken, and I'll come on to that a little bit later during my point, but they're going to get overtaken by some of these upcoming teams for sure.
And there's a lot. I think tier 2 is, I feel like we always say this all the time because it's kind of quite easy to say, but there's a lot of good tier 2 teams coming through that continue. Like, 500 won EDC, right? And they won it today or yesterday. So
yesterday, yeah.
They're a very good tier 2 team. As tier 2 teams go, in my eyes, they're one of the best. There's just the old kind of Fiend, Skade. They've always been up there. So, I guess moving on to... we'll move on to another bit of transfer news coming through as well, which is that of Endpoint, bringing in Fessa. So, of course, they had him on trial for the RMR because Nerds didn't want to get roster locked to Ents. We were kind of talking about this on stream quite a bit when we were doing the watch parties. Had Fessa in, wasn't standing for the time, but of course Fessa got dropped from, he was obviously in Astrala's talent, and then he was in Monty as well, but he got dropped from Monty because he was on leave because of like hospital, because he like broke his wrist or something. But from my understanding, his wrist isn't fixed, so I don't know. Boys, give me your thoughts.
Fixed.
Yeah,
it's like a process apparently. I remember seeing his tweets like saying it's a long process of getting 100% better. So I guess Endpoint are deciding just to snap him up right now, but while I think it's again, we kind of said this about Heavy God, right?
Yeah.
Endpoint are just taking the safe option here. They're not going for anything too fancy. Agreed. And I'll be honest, I love my Endpoint boys. I think historically they've always been a fun team to watch. But right now, I think they are one of the most uninspiring teams at that particular level, and they've plummeted to like outside the top 50. I'm pretty sure too. So yeah, they're not inspiring to me whatsoever. They're going to have to fight their way through some of these, lower tier online events again to become, relevant. Because teams like Honorus, One Win, Apex, for example, especially Voivoda. As I said, I'll get onto this later, but yeah, they worry me a lot, and I do wonder for the long-term stability and quality of this team for sure.
When they first brought in Ragin, and they had still the kind of, I'm going to just say, honorary UK core with Crucial.
Yeah.
You could definitely see that there was potential for them. They were getting upsets at EPL. They looked like a very competent side that, maybe 1 or 2 pieces, you try to break that UK core, and suddenly you would have a very, very powerful side, like a tier 2 side that could start competing. Because, regardless of what you thought about the results they had at EPL and whether or not it was a fluke, the potential was there, the individual skill was there.
Yeah.
And it made sense, to maybe try and get in another European talent into this Endpoint side. And I don't know, man. I just feel like their scouting has been really mediocre. I don't necessarily feel like they've got anything in the chamber that feels like a shoe-in. This feels like, okay, we're definitely going to see potential out of these players. Heavy God to me has been very mediocre at best. I've not seen anything inspiring enough from him throughout the time that I've been watching him. And sure, he's moldable, but I don't even think I can see the potential. That's my issue. Because with some of these other players, you would have these occasional pop-up performances that you could feel like there's potential there. MHL, of course, I think he's probably going to get sold next.
100%. He's way too good for this team.
He's now the star.
He should have
gone liquid. Let's not beat around the bush. He should be in tier 1. You can see he's good enough, like 100%.
Yeah. And then now you add in Fesser. Like, again, he's got issues with his injury and whatnot. But there's been talks about his mental issues as well. Just whether or not he can be a stable piece for a roster like this.
Yeah.
And
Apparently his
I mean,
work
we all
ethic's
know
terrible. So like, we spoke about this. Was it episode 1 or 2? We spoke about this a long
I'm
time
sure
ago.
it
I
was
do
very
remember.
early, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. To me, it feels like a very whatever move. I feel like it's definitely a downgrade because you're losing nerds.
100%.
But
Yeah.
if you want to try to recover from it as best as possible, I don't think this is necessarily the move to do it. So yeah, I think Trav, you hit the nail on the head. It's very uninspiring to watch this team now, and with the coach that they have behind them, like regardless of the past, I think Ragent has done a lot for the previous rosters he's been on. Especially with Mouse Sports, and you can definitely see that he's worked with Kerrigan very well to build some of the best players in the world. So I have an expectation that when he comes onto a roster like this, there's a good idea in place to kind of break into that tier 1.5 scene. But I don't think this is it.
I think, for me, like I love the background staff over at Endpoint, like Pete and Tom, Fact, Tobin, etc. Some of the loveliest people, some of the nicest people I've ever met in terms of esports, and I've been very influential in terms of my career. But I'm not going to use that kind of bias and not saying this like that. I just hate the decision making at the moment. I just don't like these transfers. Like Heavy God, I never liked, and I was pretty vocal about saying I didn't like that transfer, and it paid off. The only time I've ever seen him do anything inspiring is on Nuke. It's the only map he can play to a high level for some reason. He's a Nuke god. Like, he's actually sick at it.
A start of like it's 14-4, and then you look later, and there's the impact's gone after like the first 10 rounds or so. It's very strange.
He's an unbelievable nuke player. I'll give him his credit there. I've seen it so many times where he's actually a really solid nuke rifler, which is actually difficult, I've got to say, especially on the T side. But yeah, I just don't like decision making. But I think the guy who used to do the decision making, and this is all kind of in the wind. I don't know for certain, but it was a guy called Ross R, who doesn't work for him anymore, but he was the one who used to make all the decisions. So he's the one who found Flames and Boros and Nerds, these gods. Granted, a lot of it probably anybody could find if you just went on FBL and see kind of had a look who was at the top. But Festa for me is you can see talent there. Yes, 100% he was the best player on Astrala's talent. I'm not ever going to deny that. He definitely was the best player, way better than fucking Mister, I'll tell you that. But he is. It is the external things that you worry about, because when all these rumors coming out about him, being dropped from Astrala's talent because his work ethic's terrible and he's a little bit toxic, and he just doesn't ever want to improve. He just gets in the server and does his thing, and he's not doing the stuff outside of the server, which makes you a great player. It's all well and good being a good player, but Endpoint want great players because they want to be back to playing in Pro League. This is a team who still haven't qualified for the RMR, and now you've got 2 UK teams who have come out of nowhere and qualify for the RMR, and it makes you ask, why are Endpoint not looking locally? Cypher is the best rifler in the UK and way better than anybody apart from MHL on that team, and they've fluffed they fucked up their opportunity to sign him. And then you look towards Viperia, who've got talent left, right, and centre coming out of everywhere. Granted, Artis, who's arguably one of their best players, is the AWPer and IGL, and of course you kind of can't drop him in towards Endpoint. But there's so many players, not even just saying domestically, tier 2 as well. Travis, you mentioned Sound, for example. He's a free agent and he's so good at the moment, right? There's so many players in and around who are free agents who speak English who they could have picked up, and it's just it feels like, right, we got this guy in because last minute Nerds, he told Endpoint the day of the RMR quals he couldn't play. That's when Ents got a contact. So it just feels like
they've been royally fucked over, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it happens though, isn't it? Right?
But it happens when you got someone like that talented. They're gonna want to move on.
We all knew it was happening.
Times as well.
Yeah, we all knew he was going. It wasn't if he's going, it's when. We all knew at some point a tier 1 team would come knocking, and actually everyone was actually saying it was essentially gonna be Ents or Vitality, because everyone kind of knew with the timings that Dupree wasn't gonna be able to play the major, so they were gonna need a sub as well. We now know they've got Jackson. We haven't even brought up a slide for that, but they are going to be bringing in Jax for that. We could talk about that afterwards. But yeah, since we're English, we have a little bit of an extended section on Endpoint because it's annoying to see. And I feel like there's so much talent out there. At the moment, tier 2 seems as competitive as there's ever been, especially with the amount of tournaments there is. And there's so many free agent teams competing in these tournaments as well. And they just go for, a player who could stand in for them last minute, who hasn't done anything inspiring for a while. Even in the Academy League, he wasn't he was good, but he wasn't a head trick or a Manesi or a Torzi who back in the Academy League farmed everybody. He was just a player. Granted, Miles and XT at the moment have better prospect talents. Not be funny. That Slend guy is looking pretty cracked. Yimfat's obviously a god.
Torji regen. They found Slend.
Exactly.
Him, and it's a regeneration.
Yeah.
It's like Football Manager.
It's like FM. Yeah, exactly. He's sick as well. I saw him be as into the bin the other day, and he absolutely farmed them. But yeah, I don't know. It feels like Endpoint's decision making now is very much. They've definitely gone away from trying to be a competitive team, and they're just like, right, let's just make some money. And fair play. They're just opening an HQ, which obviously is extremely expensive. They're doing the rebuilds for that. But this team, they've got to feel sick to the stomach that this is one of the best opportunities for them to qualify for a major. 2 UK teams, for the first time ever, UK teams qualified for the RMR, and they're not one of them. And they lost to, I can't remember who it was, but it was someone who was, again, uninspiring, probably the best way to put it. It just makes me quite annoyed. I'll always be quite vocal about it, but it really just pissed me off because I think Endpoint, their good decision making's flown out the window. And now it's just like, right, he was here and he's a free agent. Yeah, he may have a broken wrist, but it's okay. I guess he can click with his mouse, so it's all right. Which doesn't really kind of fill you with inspiration. So I don't know. For me, I think Endpoint are on a really rough path. But I don't think 2023 is going to amount to too much. And not trying to be like mean, because it's kind of tough in this situation not to be mean. But Surreal's got to go. I'm not being funny. Like, he's not that guy anymore. I know he's a legacy player. I know he's been there for ages and he's done so much for Endpoint. But in the same way Crucial had to go, Surreal also has to go now. He's so often now he's putting up some pretty stinker performances. I've seen in the RMR, we covered a lot of Endpoint games, and Surreal is time and time again where he just wasn't playing well. So for me, if I'm Endpoint, I think he's probably next on the chopping block, and I want a young team. I think Heavy Gods are only like 21, so I want a younger team. Basically, I just hope it's kind of a young prospects team, and maybe if you want to make them a feeder seller team, do your thing. But yeah, I don't know, not a fan of those decisions, but it is what it is. It happens, right? I mean, we kind of just have to sit and watch as the premium UK org makes a kind of questionable decision, and it just is what it is. It happens, but hey ho. I mean, next one, of course, we've got over towards we're starting with the French team. We can talk about Jax. I mean, thoughts on Jax to Vitality?
Well, it has to be temporary, right? I mean, there's no way it's not temporary. I mean,
yeah.
I really like the call because obviously, famously, Jax is very barbally, and he'll raise the morale of the team, I think, almost instantly, which is something that maybe that team might need.
True.
Which also, especially short term, I think they can have some fun playing rather than maybe some added pressure that they don't necessarily need. I assume that he won't be playing long term and probably at the major. I mean, I think it goes without saying that. There are players out there, cough Esatag, that may be a really good choice. So yeah, I think for now, short term though, I like it. It gets Jack, so it's maybe a last shot at tier 1.
Yeah,
he never really got a fair punt at it in Heat, I believe. Like there was a couple of games where he had good performances, but that whole organization was a mess with them not paying their players and stuff like that. So yeah, that's it was a bit of he was never in a comfortable position or situation. He always just played as a favor almost to his teammates, obviously, who he was obviously friends with. So yeah, let's see how he does on Vitality, but I'm not expecting fireworks. I'm just expecting him to do his job, and then maybe we'll see the back of him after that, not in a mean way, in a sad way.
Yeah, I think Jax should allow. I mean, he's a good enough player for Vitality to just qualify for the playoffs at the very least. Their group is actually pretty easy. It's FaZe, Rooster, Pain, Nip, OG00, Nation, Greyhound. And so
fine.
I think they can win 2 BO3s and just qualify outright for the playoffs. If not, I think they could still scrape a win over an NIP or an OG in like one of those last chance situations. So that in and of itself for Vitality shouldn't be a bad thing. I think just making playoffs should be enough for them to be satisfied heading into the RMR. And it's great for Jax, I think, just because the EPL setting is actually awesome for him, just because he can flex his personality a little bit. Do some content pieces, and I know it sounds like really like pointless or whatnot, I mean, orgs are looking for this kind of stuff, just
brands,
to see that you're marketable. Yeah, and I think that definitely some of these orgs are going to be thinking about him, especially if he can just be a good soldier, play for Dupree spots, which aren't going to be easy by any means. But I think that he can definitely be the one that'll be that loyal soldier that will get you space for some of these players like a Zaiwu, like a Spinx, which is all that they really need at this point. I don't necessarily think they need anything too flashy, but obviously, yeah, I don't think it's a good long-term solution, but for right now, I think it serves its purpose. I think both parties will definitely be happy here.
I gotta say though, so I heard, this was during when we were doing the RMR qual streams and we were all jumping around watching some of the games. So I heard this from a source. I'm gonna call it, but a very very reputable source that essentially. So of course, config to nip, we all know about that. Like it's kind of like that is going to be long term. This is what we've been told. So config to nip long term, like 2 years, and in essentially like a triangle in a way. Tag was then going to go to Vitality again on a 6-month trial basis, including the major, but then with like option to extend essentially. So it would be like a loan, but loan with option to buy, but like buy for a good price or whatever, and they would pay the wages and whatnot. So my understanding was that Tag was going to Vitality, and I was kind of locked in about that. And when I was on stream, I was kind of saying, oh, I think maybe he might go there, and I think Nertz might go to Ents as well, because the Nertz Ents thing we kind of already knew about during the time of the RMR. If he's not playing, we obviously know he's going to one of the bigger boys. But yeah, I was told that Estag was going to Vitality, and then to see Jax pick up as well was like a bit of a shock, because Estag for me feels like the perfect person to pick up anyway. Like he's the kind of the jack of all trades. He had a very decent standing very recently. We all know about that. So I don't know, kind of questionable to me. I don't know why they went for Jax, but at the same time, it's a French org picking up a French player at a French major. They have the local fans on board, so it's kind of like I don't mind it, but I think Estag would be a better player in terms of just a pound for pound player. But I kind of like it in the sense that it's a Frenchie, and they then technically speaking have a French flag. They're a French team technically speaking at the French major, because there's 3 French players for Apex and ZywOo. So I kind of like it in a way. You know, it's homegrown local talent in a local major, which is pretty nice, especially considering how shit French CS is right now. And speaking of how shit French CS is right now, we can go on to our next one. Ooh. One of the worst, scraping the bottom of the barrel, may I say, in that of Nakama. Woohoo! This one is this one's a doozy. So Nakama, as expected by everybody who wasn't deluded, obviously just bombed out of the qualifiers because they were terrible. They nearly lost their first game. They actually should have lost their first game. We were commenting that because they didn't get seeded, obviously, because they're not on HTV, they don't play any games, so they didn't get any seeded. They were random seeded. They were playing against a mix of, I want to say they were like German guys. And yeah, they only won 16-13, and they actually should have lost. It was on Vertigo. They were so close. And the only reason they lost is because, they won like one dumb eco round, which like broke the economy of the other guys. Yeah. Essentially, this Nakama team were terrible. We knew they were going to be terrible because you got Smiths, who is as washed as they get, plus Deos, who is a notorious cheater, alleged racist, and also washed as well. It was never going to be good. When you're picking up people because they're, top 5 global, face it, but like no team experience, it was never going to work. Let's be honest. And, obviously it completely bombed out. So they have been dropped.
I think the writing was on the wall for this team. And I think there's such a problem I have with teams trying to be formulated just for the major open qualifiers when, there's so many tournaments that you can play prior to that, and you want to kind of scale up towards these major qualifiers so that you are prepared and you've got a set regiment and you're just ready to go against some of these tier 2 teams, because even tier 3 is just very dangerous right now. You can lose to anybody, and the fact that they kind of just announced this like it was this big hype thing, like this team is not going to do any damage. It's not like it's a tier 1 team that's being announced like a fresh 5-man like OG-esque type lineup that will go to the open qualifiers, and they have so much individual skill, and the IGL is just so intelligent that they can find a way through it. This is like all of these older veteran players are players that are on their last legs, if that, especially in terms of Smiths. And then your young players aren't even young. Like the Deos guy has been around the block for a while. No, like he was.
Yeah, he's been around for ages, but he's been banned twice. He got VAC banned ages ago, and then he got banned. Actually, funny enough, so the guy, so when I started commentating 2.5 years ago, it was one of my best friends from home who was on a team with a guy in the UK who was cheating, who we obviously didn't know, and he was using radar, so you can't really tell when you're like watching him. And that's why I started commentating. And Deos used to duo queue with him in ESCA. because this guy was radar hacking and Deus would just use his radar hacks, and they both just climbed into rank S. And then obviously when this guy called Artemis, anyone in the UK would know who he is. When Artemis got banned, Deus obviously got banned as well with him because they just queued every game together and they would just hack their way to the top and obviously they would get the payout from rank S. So he got banned on ESEA, which means he can't do any qualifiers, can't do any team play, couldn't basically do anything essentially because all the big qualifiers are through ESEA. So that was his most recent one, and he only just got off it. It was a 2-year ban, and I've only been commentating for 2.5 years. He's only got off it like 6 months ago. Hence why we'd always play Face It, but you can't qualify to anything through Face It. So that's why he was never on the team.
I have zero expectations for this lineup because I think they're like mentioning that Smiths might want to like coach this team or whatnot, or just like be behind the scenes or something like that. But I don't even think that like I'm finally out on Shocks. I thought that Shocks would just need to change of pace, maybe go back domestic, and maybe he could fight his way back up. But he wanted to make his own roster, and clearly I don't think he's got enough scouting tools to pick out some good individuals. I was thinking that he could do well if he went to like a Falcons or to like a
LDLC. Yeah, that new LDLC is alright to be fair.
But now I think his window's passed, and to me, I'd feel like this is the end for Shocks, which is just such a bummer because I wanted him to have at least one more team to kind of right the wrongs of what happened on Liquid, because I felt like a lot of the stuff that happened on Liquid was like wrong time, wrong place, and it just wasn't the right scene / roster for him. But if we went back domestic again, maybe he could find like one last trial, like maybe a qualification for a major here or there at the very least. But this feels like a whimper more than anything, which is very sad.
Yeah, he's not going out on a high, which is kind of it's sad to see for a legendary player. But I think you're right. Like an LDLC, I could have seen him there. I mean, I'm assuming you probably think of the offers after Apex. Or Apex was a complete shit show. And obviously things just didn't go right there. And I think it was kind of for Shocks, it felt like a loss of identity where he was like, "What now? What do I do? Do I risk going back into a tier 2 team and like?" It being, so many problems, but not always his problems as well. I think Apex was a lot of it not actually his problems. It was just, certain people playing roles but they definitely shouldn't be playing. Questions about who's calling and whatnot, different identities in terms of the team itself. So I don't actually think that was inherently Shocks' problem. But then, I think he probably just didn't want to risk it. Go to like another tier 2 team, which maybe has potential, but also can maybe not do anything. But obviously this Nakama thing has not worked out at all. The Smith thing, obviously there's like a bromance there. But at times if you want to be qualifying for a major, bromance needs to get out of the way because it obviously it fell flat. I mean, I think they only ended up winning like, did they even make day 2? I think they made day 2 on the second qual, I want to say. And it was even then
the deepest they went.
Yeah, they whimpered out on day 2 as well with not a like, I can't remember what it was, but it wasn't.
I don't even think they played a legitimate team. Like I think
it was right.
Another mix. I think.
I'm gonna have a look now, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't anyone special. But Trav, thoughts on Nakama? Oh, and also another one I want to throw out there. If you were to fix them now, who would you pick up as the 2? Like, it's a tough one because I feel like there's not a lot of French options going around. I don't know the intricacies of the French tier 3 scene, but
do you want me to cheat and use our document and say what we think's going to happen?
Well, I got an idea. So you go to this garage, right? There's this really famous garage in France.
Okay.
There's this mechanic. He's working really hard on his car, and he's like working on this like luxury brand car. Shocks walks in. He's like, "Look, man, we need you. We need you so badly." And he like that classic scene where they're like under the car and he like pushes the
and he rolls out.
It's like an after credit scene of RPK coming in.
Bonjour.
On like a those things that you slide under the car in like a garage.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
the wheelie things.
The wheelie things. Yeah.
And he has like grease all over his face. And like, have you seen Transformers? When like Megan Fox opens the hood and like the steam does his hair. Yeah. It's obvious. Yeah. It's RPK.
You just look at the camera and be like, I'm back in French or whatever, like
Le Tonk.
So I think Le Tonk. Yeah, I think it is. I think that would be pretty cool. But obviously, like he's let him live his retirement.
He's loving life. It seems
he doesn't want to be thrust into this absolute shit show that is
tier 2 CS or whatever.
French CS.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there we are. But yeah, that does lead us on, I guess, to me saying, You know, we're looking at one tweet and who knows? Maybe he's trolling and he's signed a contract with a poker company or a fucking like
GTA
roleplay company
Yeah.
because that's all he does anymore. But Kiyoshima, of all people,
Oh my god.
did tweet a
A
contract
bait.
sign gif.
Yeah.
So does that mean that he's going to Nakama? That is, honestly, I'll say it right now. It's a dead move, absolute dead move. But it does give them more name value, and obviously Shox and Kyo, as that duo, have played together before and famously had their instances and incidents. So yeah, I'm interested to see if how he actually plays if he does get added.
And the crowd goes mild with this announcement of Kiyoshima potentially.
It's like, yay, guys, Kyo's back, and everyone's like, okay, yeah, who's he playing for? This dead French roster.
This dead French team, Nakama. Are they an org, or is it just like they just gave us a name? Like,
I don't think it's an org.
If they're getting money, that is absolute paycheck stealing. I was gonna say, like, I'm hoping it's not, but yeah, Kiyoshima. I don't know. I just hope this isn't him going to Nakama, because then that team goes from being like, okay, you know, you were trying to do something with the RMR, didn't work out, that's it, you know, go your separate ways, to now actually like a meme. Because what are they actually going to do now? They're not going to get invites to tournaments. Like, if you're CCT or EDC or anybody, and if you invite these guys of name value, you'll get so much flack, because there is 1,000 better tier 2 teams. Like, this is not...
You're playing for viewership, right? Like, you think you're trying to draw viewers in, and I think that could definitely do it. But they're not even playing these events. That's the issue, right? Like,
but
if they don't even play these events, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but what is he signing for? That's the thing. Like, that's what I don't get, right? If it is Nakama, because the whole thing with Nakama was they came back to give it a go for the RMR and see if they qualify for the major. It didn't happen, right? But like, my expectation was they are now just gonna, you know, disband and do their own thing. But then they're doing like roster announcements, like, oh, you know, we're getting rid of Smiths and Deos. But it's like, I thought the whole point was everybody goes after the RMR, because you're obviously never gonna make it there. But they when they came out, they're like, we're gonna give it a go. We're gonna have a full French team at the RMR. That's the plan. And if it doesn't happen, whatever, right? But then, are they sticking together? I mean, I guess they got nothing better to do, right? They're all unemployed, so they may as well. But like, I don't know. Thoughts?
It's very weird.
Kiyoshima, Annie?
Look, it's fine. It's fine. Like, I mean, if Kyo were to come back, I think this is the only opportunity that he really could get, if we're being realistic. Like, I don't really think he has any other ins, even in the domestic scene. I know
he was
the domestic
he was a
scene
sub for someone though, like LDLC or he. I can't remember one of the two, but he was their sub. I swear, like up until very recently. I thought with all them fucking up that he might come back, but then you go and check his Twitch and he's just on GTA running about in RP, so maybe not.
And then I don't think he's good enough to compete European, like on European mixes either. No. So, I mean, for him, I'm sure he's pretty happy, but like, I don't think it's anything positive for anybody else involved. So,
how old is he? Is he got to be in 30s, right? Surely.
Let's have a look. He is 28.
Oh my god, that is actually younger than I thought it was. Fair enough. I actually thought he was older than that, to be fair.
He's like the most forgotten about two-time major winner that I can think about. You know, there's no one else that I can think of that's won 2 majors. That's just
my brain still registered, and I was like, he's only won one major, and then I was like, shit, dude, he's won 2.
Yeah. Who was the last team he played for?
Like, Heretics. Yes.
Oh my god.
It was like the 3D Max, and then they
Yeah, don't forget he had a little stint on Cloud9 as well. That was mad.
He did.
That was like the Cloud9 like Kyo Flusher.
Oh no, he played Double Pony.
Golden was on it.
He played with Double Pony for 3 games.
Wow.
So he was Heat sub. That was it. He was Heat 6th man. Like, he was always registered as their 6th. Like, whenever they signed up to tournaments, he was always their sub on paper. So I think, like, I thought with Heat imploding because they weren't paying anybody, allegedly. I thought that was going to be like, he might, you know, come back because they were still competing in like everything under the sun. But no, I mean, I don't know if you're a player why you joined them, because they weren't like they're apparently not paying. They apparently haven't paid their Valorant team and didn't pay the majority of their CS team. So it feels like you just go in there to lose money. But I guess if you're building name value, is what it is, right?
Yeah.
I guess that we can swiftly move on to what have we got? Travis, do you want to do your bit, Travis?
So I have a few thoughts at the moment. Tier 2 is kind of a bit of a mess right now.
Yeah.
And I think it actually gives me a little bit of a thought off the back of one of Richard Lewis's articles that he did recently about the standards of CS being very poor. And I actually kind of see where he's coming from, because I really do think that the 2021 Navi, versus FaZe, and then FaZe, of course, being last year. I think those two eras were very, very, real quality, and I really enjoyed watching those. And I do feel like the last 6 months or so, it's kind of the quality's lowered ever so slightly, in terms of who's really S tier. Because as I think we said on the last podcast, or maybe on a different podcast that I did. I think at the moment for me, only G2 and Heroic were like S tier.
Agreed.
Which wasn't the case in the past. But I actually made a little tweet thread, which I haven't tweeted yet. It's in my drafts, but I'm going to read it out loud right here, right now.
Exclusive.
There's some truth. Yeah, there you go. There's some truth to saying the current level of Pro CS isn't as good as the Navi phase streaks of 2021 and 2022. But it's downright foolish to say the overall level is low, in my opinion. The gap from Tier 2 to Tier 1 and Tier 3 to Tier 2 has never been closer, more competitive, or had as much depth. I could pick a solid 3 or 4 current Tier 2 teams that, for me, would have, for example, run early God tier Astralis relatively close, and most likely have wiped the floor with 87-0 NIP, but that's not a wild statement at all. That's just how game evolution and time works. You could argue that the evolving nature of CSGO from at least the first few years, 2013 to 2015, is so significant that you could use sporting analogies like Formula One of comparing and say Jim Clark, Lewis Hamilton. Jim Clark's from the 1960s, Lewis Hamilton is from the modern day. It's just not possible to know. Everything is different. Each era has a different GOAT, even though of course that means all time. Each era has their legendary team/player, and you can't really compare these things. However, despite all that, right now, I feel like Tier 2 is flip-flopping around all over the place, because occasionally you have a team going on a wild streak. We've seen it twice this year already.
Yeah.
We've seen Aurora on a 15 BO3 win streak. We've seen Voivoda, the basically ex-Fiend without Victor. Legendary, obviously, stack of game players that almost made the major. They were on a 11 streak in a row of BO3s, of which they didn't lose a map. 2-0 and all 11 in a row.
Yeah.
And we're getting these every now and then. But then these teams are topping out and can't stay consistent anymore after that. Right now, I think the most consistent we can get is we look at Eternal Fire, who are more like Tier 1.5 now, after their success at CCT. You look at BNE, who also did okay in CCT as well. They're not in Pro League, for example. So, it's not the best at the moment. And the big sort of plus points for me is, at the moment, I can think of Apex and Nine, because Apex are on a streak of their own right now. They've made the RMR. Nine have made the RMR and are going to IEM Rio 2023, which is huge.
Yeah.
But, who knows where they go from there? I feel like all these Tier 2 teams are getting great runs and topping out. And we have instances of that already, with Copenhagen Flames having such a great streak toward the end of last year. Yeah. And now they're a bit wobbly.
Terrible, yeah. They're really struggling right now.
All of these teams that have gotten these streaks, to me, the biggest indication that we are in a very wonky state is that at the most important inflections of these teams' successes, they collapse. And so we're talking the RMR Open qualifiers, we're talking RMR closed qualifiers, we're talking about Dallas qualifiers, we're talking about not Dallas qualifiers, they haven't had, but other S tier
like Brazil and Rio and stuff like that.
Yeah, Brazil, that's what I'm thinking about. Where these teams get the invites because you're making waves within your region. You're definitely turning some heads, but you get upset by teams that you should be normally beating. And that is, I think, the biggest worry for some of these teams for me is that I think mentally their headspace is just not in it to take it over the top and finally play one of these lands. Because I think once you play one of these lands, that's where you can kind of put your money where your mouth is. You start to, at least the individuals can start showing kind of technically how good they are at the game, whether they can take some scalps against some better named teams, and that's where the ESL World Ranking stuff starts happening.
True.
You start getting more invites, and the cycle continues. You can kind of just see it with IHC right now. That one Kato run is now allowing them to play, or at least get invited to so many different tournaments in the coming months, and that alone is just breaking the cycle. Yeah, they don't get that that kind of pass because they're not getting the first step, that final step to kind of qualify for these lands. I mean, I'm talking like just 2 or 3 BO3s that they have to win out of their 15 BO3 win streak. It's just the final little hurdles they just can't overcome. I'm not sure if it's a mental thing. I'm not sure if it's a kind of individual thing that some of these players are just not ready for that type of game. But to me, it feels like a lot of we're on the cusp of everything coming back to normal, and I think that you need a couple of these teams to kind of go over the edge and actually make the run through before things start to change at the top level.
And to mention as well, a couple of teams that at the end of the last year who were saying really, decent tier 2 teams who were actually competing with tier 1 and really taking it to them. Gamer Legion, Sangal, those two teams have been struggling quite a bit as well. I mean, Gamer Legion a little bit better form recently. Sangal have dropped outside of the top 30. They're not even, it's seen as one of the premium tier 2 teams anymore.
Didn't make the RMR.
Didn't make the RMR, exactly.
I don't even think they made the closed, right? Like, I'm not even sure they even made it.
No, I don't think so. I think that's huge, right, as well, because, Gamer Legion as well, you mentioned them, they've been on and off and not as consistent as last year, but I think it has to be said that Copenhagen Flames are the biggest disappointment because
100%.
I mean you spoke to Regali. I mean I'll let you take it from here because they know how poor that run was, and that was their huge chance to make that step up.
Yeah, and it was like one of those things when I spoke to Regali end of last year. He was saying, this is at the point where they were in the prime. They were winning everything. Hadn't lost the game. I think they went on a 26 game win streak, including best of ones and best of threes. It was absolutely ridiculous what Copenhagen Flames are doing. It was absolutely bonkers. The performance they were putting on. They were winning everything. Multiple CCTs in different regions, winning them. EDC the previous season won that as well. Everything was going their way. And they were saying, oh yeah, it's not about, oh, we hope we qualify for the RMR. It's, oh, we should be going the major. We should be making it to challenger stage at the very least. And that's the sort of conversations they were having. Regali was saying, we're not thinking about, oh, we have to make it to the RMR, we have to fight. That's not even a thought process. We're thinking about, oh, how are we going to make it through the RMR when we come against tier 1 teams? We're preparing for past the point of where they're already at. And now they've fallen so flat. It does make you think as well that potentially the changes can have to be made over towards Copenhagen Flames because they can't keep sitting on these performances when they know they've had the highs. Something's got to change. Realistically, I was going to say that exactly that. So maybe you look towards stabilizing because you don't need any help with an IGL. You basically argue, in my opinion, got the second best IGL in tier 2, best being Shuhei, or Shuhei, I'm going to say. In second best, in my opinion, being that a bird from Sky. I mean, everybody works him as he's a genius. And he obviously has a lot of success. He brought Lingby Vikings to success. He's brought Copenhagen Flames to success. So I think rifling is the only thing they need a problem with. They obviously don't need to fucking fix their AWPer because they've got the best AWPer in all of tier 2, tier 1.5. A rifle AWPer could comfortably play tier 1 right now. In that of Regali. So a rifler would be good. Maybe refresh is the answer because we know he's already played tier 1. Obviously speaks Danish as well, speaks English, all the rest. So maybe that's the change to come through. But Copenhagen Flames, something's got to change because they are in a rough space. The only one that you threw out that I think I really agree with is 9. I think they are they're solid. Not even to a point of they're going to these heat streaks the way tier 2 teams do, but they're actually a solid team. And you can see in the way that they play.
Just Hades,
yeah, exactly.
It's not only Hades. It's everything stepping up, clicking, which is huge.
Yeah, I think Kylo's starting to have some really good impact as well. Where he's struggled. He's only a young guy anyway, but he struggled a little bit. So they're actually a decent team. I think it's the RMR. I actually think they should make the challenges. They look pretty damn good. I think Aurora still look very good as well. I know they went on a massive heat streak, but that team is stacked. I mean, we always talk about Russian 5 stacks and Face It, whatever, just being cracked, but they are absolutely fully the dog's bollocks. That team is seriously talented. Aurora, they should make
see them in some quals too.
They should make challenges no problem. When it comes to looking towards Melbourne, Dallas, all of these IEMs coming up, they should always be there. I think they actually did end up bombing out of IEM Rio though, which is unfortunate. Off the top of my head, they actually didn't. They dropped out actually relatively quite early. But overall, I still think that Aurora team are very good. And we should see them go far.
What I will say about the Copenhagen Flames thing as well, I was on the same vein as the Snacks to Sprout IGL rumor, which is very, very unconfirmed and very, very pinch of salt. I have seen some tweets saying that they're thinking of getting rid of Bird from Sky Ralls, which is
why Bird from Sky? Ralls understand.
Bird from Sky, I don't know. Ralls fine. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Ralls is a bit rash.
Sky. That is a bit of a
for who? There's no IGLs. Who they pick? Unless they're picking up Maze, right? Maze, it's got to be Maze.
Unless they're going Maze.
Yeah.
There's a chance that could be the case. But of course, it would most likely have to be Danish because, of course, they were a full Danish team regarding Romanian, but can speak Danish as well. So they'd have to make sure they stay within that realm. So
it's got to be
Maze.
Maze.
Wonder if they're going to get rid of Bird from Sky. I hope they don't, but It's not like he's getting any younger, so perhaps we do consider Maze as a really good choice to perhaps kickstart Copenhagen Flames once again to go on those sort of streaks at that level, because obviously Maze didn't get a chance in Sprout, so
I get
maybe he
Rolls,
gets a
but
chance here.
I don't get
I know
Bird from
Rolls.
Sky.
Yeah, Rolls dropping is a good choice. Bird from Sky, I'm not sure about.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. I hope they don't. I really do like Bird from Sky as an IGL, and everybody who's worked with him says he's an absolute god. So,
agreed.
Who knows?
I guess we can talk about the other half of what you're saying, Travis, just about the standard of CS right now, and
Go ahead,
whether or not Tier 1 is in a comfortable spot right now, and that we can kind of like mishmash that with like the talks about Kato, because I think they go both hand in hand.
Okay.
And at the end of this tournament, we've basically figured out that G2 and Heroic are neck and neck. Or not neck and neck, but in that upper echelon conversation of like, these are the best teams that we have right now. FaZe is somewhere in that conversation as well. And then you kind of have Liquid and Navi hovering below that, and then Vitality and company below that as well. And I don't know. I think that I think there's definitely a bit of truth in kind of what Richard Lewis is saying, in that some of these teams are very weak. I think Liquid is a team that's very susceptible to losing to anybody. Navi's going through their own rebuilds. Vitality is Vitality. I mean, you can kind of see that the players that they have, they should be winning a lot more.
Yeah.
Obviously, I could have that same conversation about a team like Cloud9 as well. And then, of course, if you want to look past that, FaZe have their own like mortal situation where it doesn't necessarily seem that they have a solution yet, but they also are not the FaZe of old. Outsiders don't have enough firepower as of late. NIP is in flux. Like, I mean, I can go down all of these teams, but the problem is that I don't necessarily know if I completely agree with Richard Lewis saying that like this is like the worst. This is like I think the quote that he said was like, this is the worst competitive era that we've had since like the inception of the game, which is just astounding to me, because I think that there are a lot of different eras where the best teams in the world capitalized on a weak field. And what do I mean by that? Yes. I mean, I think about Navi when they had their huge run, and you have to look at the competition that they played against there. All of these teams that I'm talking about right now, they all had same issues. And I mean, there were so many different choking issues on teams that were transitioning from from online to LAN. You obviously had Gambit, you had Heroic, all of these teams that kind of had their own issues and struggles. But Navi still capitalized. They still broke records. They still, tore through. And honestly, there is a potential that they could have kept that form up if the geopolitical situation didn't happen, right? But we don't necessarily dock Navi in that sense, or dock the competitive era in that sense, and say that that field was not exciting to watch. It was still exciting CS. I mean, we loved to watch Navi kind of just tear through all this competition, and then finally, when you had FaZe come back and come back with ROPS, and that whole rivalry decided to brew, it was exciting CS, because again, so you're like, finally everybody's gearing up to take down this big Navi team. And so it's a very long-winded way of me saying that, like, right now you've got G2 that is poised to be that kind of Navi of right now. And now you've got all of these teams that are slowly going to start to get their act together once G2 start racking up trophies. I think they're still the favorites to win EPL, especially now that they've got a break to kind of iron things out between groups B, C, and D to play out. I think they'll be back in form heading into playoffs. So they're still in pole position, and I'm sure Heroic will be on their ass too. But that's where teams like Liquid, Navi, Vitality, C9, all of these top teams that you think can gun for those top spots will get their act together come Paris, or even beyond Paris. And I think that we'll be right back to that competitive field once again. And this is I love that whole conversation about Launder saying that he loves the dominant teams in CS, because when we have all of these teams trying to vie and take down your G2s, your Navis, your Liquid in 2019, and you keep going back in history, all of those teams, it's so much fun to watch them try to get toppled. And I think that kind of potential is just very exciting.
I agree. I also like, so I agree with the whole like notion that like Launders and a lot of other people, I think Thorns has kind of voiced very similar memos with it. They say, it's bad at the moment because there's no like real dominant top team, and that makes it like, terrible to watch. I understand what they're saying, because it's very easy in terms of a storyline and narrative, like who can take them down, can anybody compete with them, or these guys are just the best, and we're kind of getting that a little bit at the moment, where it's now like, can anybody beat G2? Because Heroic have got close now, but you know they haven't beaten them on a couple of occasions, on the last 2 occasions. So we're saying, can anybody beat them? But I also like, in some ways, I like when you see, I guess I call it the other way, I like the underdog runs. Like I like having these like teams coming out of nowhere and do deep runs in towards majors. Like back when Flames went deep in towards Antwerp and Stockholm, right? Like that, to me, I find that like super exciting. I guess it's more because it's a bit of a home field thing. Like we spend a lot of time watching these teams, so it's good to see them kind of make these runs. But I disagree with the thought process that this is like the worst like competitive CS has ever been in. I think this is the most competitive CS has ever been in, but that also in some ways makes it at times weird in terms of watching it, because we don't have like, you know, a clear outlier. Maybe of course, you know, G2 at the moment, but like generally speaking, we don't have this long era where it's like 9 months of one team absolutely farming everybody, the way it used to be, where it was kind of like, you know, obviously we had Nip 87-0, but like, you know, we've always had these long periods of like Nip and Fnatic and Virtus Pro, and all of these teams have had their big eras where they've been unstoppable for multiple majors. Now we're going, you know, 1 or 2 major tournaments, and then that's it. Like even now there's conversations of having like, you know, after Blast Premier at the end of the year, everyone was saying, well, G2 should drop off. And then now that G2 have won Kato, everyone's like, well, you know, they've had their 2, and now they should drop off, heading in towards the major and Pro League. Like, or Pro League, for example, people are now saying, well, you know, G2, you know, they've had their 2. And I've seen these kind of conversations flying around. And I can understand why people are like kind of just saying that they don't like that. And it's understandable. But I don't know. I've always liked the underdog story. So I don't like the notion that things are not good now. I just had a lost note. Go on,
go ahead.
I was gonna say,
look how fresh IHC is. That's just a breath of fresh air and beating teams at this level, right?
Exactly. And I was gonna say just another thing. Like Launders did a video today, just like a general like CS video basically. And one of the things he mentioned was kind of just saying like any kind of level 10s now could farm that old NIP 87-0 team, and he's actually kind of he's spot on. But like that's how the game changes, right? And I think, you know, for the likes of Thorin and Richard Lewis, obviously, you know, legends of this esport, some of the most critically acclaimed voices we've got, right? And we obviously always will have that respect in a way, but you know, their opinions are in a way kind of dated, as well as the CS that they used to follow. They're used to that old style of CS, but that's not what CS is anymore. CS is not like that. We now have, with the way open quals and closed quals work, we have, you know, these tier 2 teams who come in and do upsets, like we saw with FaZe at the Rio RMR. You know, people always saying like FaZe should have gone through and won the whole thing, and the fact that they didn't, that made the major immediately shit. But there's a different type of exciting where it's like, oh my god, the best team in the world have just lost to Gamer Legion. Like, what the fuck is happening? Gamer Legion, they weren't even a team when they entered the qualifiers. They were just a mix. And they've now just taken down the best team in the world. So I don't know. For me, I find that really exciting. Like that is like such a cool storyline that like I'll always remember. Like whenever I'll cover G2, Gamer Legion now, may I say, I'll always be like, oh my fucking god. Do you remember when Gamer Legion did this run when they qualified? And you know, and I find that really exciting. So I've always kind of opposed this notion that, you know, competitive content is now shit because there's not one good team. I personally don't like that.
The thing is, to me, it makes those streaks that we've had recently with kind of G2 on Nuke and G2 in their BO3 wins, it makes those streaks that much more exciting, right? Because then you think about how susceptible some of these top teams can be in the last couple of years. And it makes it more impressive because you're like, I don't think we're ever going to get this again because the level is just so high. So I think...
Like Astralis. Right? Like, oh my god. Like
second, no?
Yeah, it was second. Yeah,
G2 on the list. We're second behind the NIP.
Really impressive. Yeah. Which I don't.
Was it 21? Really hard to... Was that what it was? 21?
Something. I think it was above 20. I think.
Also, just make you sorry. Did you see the graph where they put the 87 like, but actually like how big it's actually meant to be, and it like, nuts. Also shows kind of just how one side of the CS was. But sorry, carry on.
But I mean, it just makes it that much more exciting because, again, records are always meant to be broken. There's always that conversation. But the fact that we're still breaking records to this day at this day and age with how high level the game is, it makes me really excited for Paris, man. I mean, there's so much unknown and mystery behind that event, and with kind of how things have shaken up, at least in the last 3 majors, I think anything can happen. Anything is fair game at this point, and Rio was a big cold reality slap for us all to kind of realize that literally anything is possible. We can get an Outsiders Heroic Grand Final. It is possible. Just with the level of the teams that we have right now.
Yeah, exactly that. I guess on that topic, is that everything you wanted to wrap up there, Trav?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, as I said, like I had that little tweet thread for a while that I wanted to talk about, and obviously the standard stuff is something that I was interested in your thoughts as well. And we've covered that, and the tier 2 being a mess thing, and
I can't wait to nab it.
And then stopping. So you nab quite a few things, don't you? Anyway, Katowice roundup.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next one. Let's
Kato
have a talk
roundup.
about Kato.
Who wants to start with Kato?
Expected result.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I mean, theoretically, everything worked out according to plan. I guess we can talk about what went wrong, or what was different, or what we didn't expect. And I think the number one thing is probably just Liquid going as deep as they did.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, I think everybody kind of figured after that World Final performance that it was a bit of a caveat in kind of Liquid's recent performances. And you could see that at the spring groups, Liquid looked mortal, absolutely getting slapped around by Big. But I think some of the performances Liquid did, I fully expected for them to drop the ball against FaZe. And I'm not going to say that FaZe played poorly by any means. Liquid just had a very, very good best of 3. They edged it out on Mirage. There was a world where I thought, it's Mirage. FaZe love to clutch up on this map, and Liquid love to choke. So I just had a sneaking suspicion that Liquid would just drop out there, and that would be where I would say, Liquid had a good tournament. They met their proper results, and that should be that. But they went on to play Vitality, and I think even there, they played very well. And overall, I'm just very happy with how they vetoed against some of these top teams. They were always in winning positions, so that if they got to a map 3, they were always playing in a map that they were the most comfortable in.
Yeah.
And even against G2, even though they got blasted out of the server, I think they still vetoed well there. So I'm just really impressed by the kind of poise that they had at this tournament. Now, whether or not this is replicable, I have absolutely no idea. You never know with this team. You never know with this 5-man unit. But I think I'm definitely very satisfied as a North American fan that this happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. I'm just, the issue that I have is it goes sort of continues on from our previous point. It just feels like that Liquid on Vitality, well, they do have the ability to seemingly beat everyone, maybe apart from G2. At the moment, it seems like they're like the wishy-washiest like semi-final teams you could ever see. You know, like it doesn't feel. The mistakes that you see made from teams like Vitality and Liquid just don't seem to befit of a team that can make the semi-finals of Kato to me, and it doesn't fill me with much confidence, of course, for their future. That it would have to be big errors or made by a G2 or Heroic, or perhaps one of them just plainly not attending for a Liquid or a Vitality to actually win these events. And as we saw, like what even dating back last year, we saw what ridiculousness it took for Vitality to win that season of Pro League. Zyro had to go, the hardest he ever had to go, which is unbelievable, like it's truly unreal. So, yeah, it does worry me slightly. However, there are positives to take from Liquid's run 100%. I mean, I think getting that as far as they did again shows that they're the team that is probably taking advantage of the level of the other teams the most. They seem to be that sort of third to fourth very, very commonly over the last 6 months or so, which can only be a good sign if they can try and make that step up one day. But of course, we don't necessarily even know what that step up is going to be. Cloud9 are all over the place, but I'm seeing signs of improvement, and I do actually believe in them kind of more than a Liquid or a Vitality for some unknown reason. I don't know why I believe in this current Cloud9
beating
G2
G2 is a start, right?
True.
Beating G2 is absolutely a start in Pro League, but for some reason I believe in them more than Liquid and Vitality. Maybe not as much as I still believe in Navi, purely because of the simple factor, even though he's not hard carrying as much as he used to. But yeah, it just sort of repeats my point and tells the tale about the current state of it. I think the result of the whole event of Kato was correct. It went as expected. The biggest overperformance was probably IHC. If they can continue that, I'll be delighted, because as I said earlier, they're a breath of fresh air.
Just a side note on IHC, a lot of people kind of are coming into these sort of, when they're coming into these tournaments, and everyone's kind of saying like, oh my, Asian Counter-Strike, they're just dog shit. But these guys absolutely dominate domestically. Like, it's not even close. Everyone likes to talk about kind of Rare Atom and the likes of Lin Vision, who, of course, we a couple of years back when they played against G2 and Starry and Ace and whatever, which actually I found out yesterday by a friend of mine who's he's from China. He's like an international student in England, and he was saying apparently Starry got in loads of trouble for that tournament. I can't remember the exact tournament it was. When they beat G2 on Vertigo and he got an ace, because he was 17 at the time, right? He was underage, and you're not allowed to play international professional games when you're underage. So he got in a load of trouble when he went back home, because I think he basically lied to get out the country to go and play in this tournament. I think it was during the COVID era, so they were boot camping, I think, and in somewhere in one of the relog studios or whatever. But anyway, yeah, I this IHC side, they absolutely farm domestically. They win everything, like all the qualifiers, and for pretty good reason. This is a very decent side. So I'm glad to see them get kind of the respect they deserve as well. And they got like kind of a few funny stories as well, like how the reason why Bartak's playing as well, because like one guy, so when they qualify. Yeah. So one guy had a kid, and Bartek's come in as a replacement, and then another one. I think it's Score maybe. The reason why he came in was like whoever was there before. I forget his name. When they qualified for the major originally, the first time they qualified, Cabal. Yeah. So when they qualified for the major originally, they were celebrating and he went drinking, and when he celebrated, he like slammed his hand on his desk and he broke his hand, so he couldn't play the RMR or whatever, or the major or whatever it was that he celebrated for. I think it was the RMR they qualified for. And he celebrated, he slammed his desk, broke his hand, had to get surgery. They get a sub in. The sub plays better than he does, so they just kick him and keep the sub, who ended up being like Score, I think it was. So a very, very funny story about IHC. But generally speaking, they're actually a very good team. I'm glad to see them getting a bit of respect. I think there's also very good other prospects over in that region. I've seen, obviously, having covered in IEM Rio, and I do a lot of the ECL stuff as well. Like, obviously, Rare Atom are not as good anymore. They definitely dropped off in form. They're flawless though in the groups, but it doesn't really count. Groups there's so many.
Mongolia are the dominant region.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
100%. 100%. The only thing is if Rare Atom and Lin Vision had a team of the best players, they would then be the dominant team. I'm so confident in it. If you add Jam Young and Starry in the same team, there's no one stopping them. I don't care. There's no chance. Absolutely no chance. Put Kaze on the AWP as well, they'd be absolutely fine. They're a very, very good team. But yeah, I don't know. I'm glad to see them come through. Obviously, as expected a result coming through G2. They look very, very good. The one thing I am actually worried about, the other side, we're talking about G2 at the top or Liquid playing well. A team that I'm very concerned about, and I think are in for a very rough 2023 if things pan out the way they are, is Big. Oh my god, this team are not in a good place. One thing I would say is the only thing that actually looks positive about them is that Hyped is actually very good, very, very good. But the one time we saw him play good, which was in those Rio quals, was the fact that Hyped wasn't playing any positions. You could very evidently tell. I cast them twice, and he was just free roaming. And obviously you can get very good stats as an AWPer if you just free roam into hero roles and take a lot of contact and just be like a cracked at the wazoo kid. But it meant that Tabson had I think one of the worst performances he's had in multiple years. It was so bad. He was getting 5 kills a map kind of thing because he was just filling the shit positions. And overall, Big just didn't play well at all. And then because of Kato, they didn't play well. They bombed out in dead last place with Cloud9. So Big for me in a very, very worrying space. I don't know what's going to happen to that team, but I just don't think it's going to be good.
Their map pool has absolutely collapsed ever since the Dust 2
It's 6 maps in it or something
and I think the issue is they can't play Anubis. I mean, they had that insane win against Liquid, which just didn't make any sense. But since then, they're 33% over 6 maps. They can't necessarily play much of Overpass or Vertigo ever. And they try to do some shenanigans in the first rotation that doesn't necessarily work out, which now forces them to play Inferno a little bit more. And I don't think their Inferno is very good. It always felt a little bit more of a pocket pick more than anything. And then again, they're barely playing any Ancient, and of the Ancient that I saw, it was very much a hype carry performance, which is not giving me good signs by any means about the structure of Big on that map in particular. So then again, you're just relying on one map, and it's even less impressive than Dust 2 now in Mirage, which is a map that anybody can play, unlike the Dust 2 in previous, where there were certain teams that would stave away from it, and you could definitely punish people in the veto. I don't think you can really punish anybody in the same way with Mirage.
And anyone's happy to ban it. I don't think any top team doesn't mind banning Mirage because they know they can just outplay Big on any map which requires the smallest bit of util. So
yeah, I think even in that sense, like these BO3s are going to get really hard to win. They play Complexity in their opening best of 3. And I'm going to be completely honest. I think there is a huge window of opportunity for Complexity to snap up an opening round victory here.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Big is scary, and obviously, like, pride of German Counter-Strike right now, while Hyped looks genuinely decent, and while there are other options out there in case they need to move on. They've got their own academy, which is where they got Hyped from. They've got alternate attacks where they could pluck a few players from.
Get slacks.
It's yeah.
That's a joke. That's a joke. Do not get slacks.
Yeah, there you go. But like, it's scary. Like that scene is it's borderline. Like if you remove Big, it's almost as rough as like the Dutch scene, because like all you really have from the Dutch scene is Fascia at the moment.
Big Academy won their pro league, like they're not the pro league, sorry, their German national league. That says it all. Like the best team is some kids in and so much so actually that I've heard wind about like if national leagues were going to stick around, that teams are just going to go and get like nationality or whatever it's called, like a residency over there, because it's free real estate. Like you're playing against like what Crystal's Mix, that's free. And you're playing like against alternate attacks, even with Slacks, free. Sprout aren't playing there anymore because they had to play with Red and Patrick, who actually are very good, to be fair to them. They're actually kind of class, but they said
they're not playing anymore, right?
Yeah, so not going to do it anymore. And they've sold those two guys now. I think one of them plays for alternate attacks, I'm pretty sure. I think Patrick, I think. And yeah, so basically Big Academy won it, but then obviously they couldn't take the spot. That says it all. I mean, that league is actually bad. There's a world in which you can actually make arguments that they, barring Big, are as bad, actually worse than like France. Even with Big, maybe even worse. Just like Big play in the big events, but they're also a partner team. Which is different. EG's a partner team and they're fucking shit. So
but compare them with UKCS, wink wink.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just saying, so I don't know. It's a bit bigger in a rough space. I don't know. It feels very, very wonky.
It's spooky.
Happy to move on to Pro League?
No, because I have to give my credit to Complexity.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Turning things around. I'm shocked with the kind of level that they showed.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that we have a second North American team to talk about in a good light. They kept it close against Heroic. They beat Mouse. They beat Fnatic. And they should have beaten Outsiders as well. I actually think they were definitely the more worthy playoff team, at least the form that they showed. Outsiders, I don't even think should have been in that lower final if OG had their full 5. I think Flames was actually sick on the day. So they had to play with Rugga in the server, and Fiku somehow rated below Rugga across the best of 3. So you're basically playing 5v3 at that point.
Hate to say it.
And so I think Outsiders look very mortal, at least throughout Katowice, and Complexity showed that they could go toe to toe with them as well. So I'm very happy that I'm seeing finally confidence bloom from some of these players. You could totally see that they just needed one BO3 win to go their way against one of these top teams, and now kind of the juices are flowing. You see Grim doesn't have to hard carry throughout these games anymore, which is just a really good sign for things to come. Alzerk is finally performing again. Floppy had a good couple of series himself.
Can't stop the flop.
So I'm very hopeful.
They're tier 1.5 now. They are
yeah,
tier 1.5.
Yeah, comfortably. No,
I
comfortably.
genuinely believe.
I'm very hopeful.
I'm a hater, but I'll agree on it. I'm a hater, but I'll agree on it all day.
I know.
The thing, I actually,
you don't want to see me win.
No, I don't want to see you win. But I've never actually been a Complexity hater. I just thought they were overrated when, I originally thought they were overrated. And I'll happily say it, I didn't think Halzok was a good signing because he wasn't that good in EU. Like, he just wasn't. But he's obviously, he does some magic here. And I got to say, I think for me now, of every player in Tier 1, I think Halzok is my favorite. Like, he's just the most likable. Not as a player. There's plenty better players than him. But in terms of personality, oh my God. If anybody at home who haven't seen it, go and watch his content piece. It is, I would probably say, the best content piece ever. I actually happily throw that out there. And I would take fisticuffs for anyone. Like, that had me crying with laughter, and that not often I get that. So yeah, done an absolute done a stellar job.
Now-
They look really good.
Now the whole question is can they replicate it at EPL? They have definitely a group to do so. It's Heroic, Movistar, Big, Furia, Imperial, Saw.
I think it's
Mouse.
doable. All of them look weak. Everyone apart from Heroic is so beatable. They're all in the worst forms
think-
they've been in years.
So what is it? It's 4 teams that make it through, and I think that they could make it through as at least one of those 4.
They're the
Maybe
second best team. I'm saying
Comfortably,
it right now.
no, 100%. They
Yeah.
if they don't finish second, I'll be disappointed. If they like,
Problem
I'll
is,
actually
right?
flame them if they don't finish second.
Problem is that they can't necessarily finish second in their group this time around because they'll play Heroic directly
True,
if they
I can
beat
see
Big.
that, yeah.
So they'd have to
of
go to
course.
the second bracket.
Yeah.
Because there's 3 brackets now.
Still,
but,
they beat Movistar, they beat Big,
All
they
day.
beat Furia. I would say.
I say
right
so.
now,
Furia,
look
they're-
they could beat
messy.
Furia,
They're
yeah.
shaky. They're
Yeah.
shaky.
Imperial, they beat Imperial. They've already shown
Easily.
they can beat Mouse, and they can beat Saw. That's all of them.
100%.
Heroic.
It's possible for sure.
All Saw have dropped off in form massively since they won ECL season 43. So like, I mean, that one was the one I was thinking that maybe if Saw kept up their form, there's a world in which potentially they could be a little bit of a dark horse team. But no, aside from that, I can't see a world in which I can't see a world in which they don't. Right? I mean, all of those teams, Imperial. Definitely, I think that's very winnable. I mean, Imperial look shaky.
Mouse are worrying.
Mouse are
They've
so
already beaten
shaky.
them, and they lost to
Saw
OG
could beat
as well.
Mouse, by the way. No joke
Oh,
when I say
yeah.
that. Saw could beat Mouse, 100%.
No, I think so too.
You jerks masterclass inbound. Furia, they're still a very good team. Don't get me wrong, but they've been definitely shakier than they have been in the past. Big, obviously we just talked about Big. They're very winnable, and Movistar are absolutely horseshit at the moment. So they like no. I know that Martin's guy. Everyone keeps hyping him up. I'm still yet to see anything positive, like really positive.
I've seen one good game out of all the games they've played since they lost.
It was a debut.
Oh, it was
I
a
thought his
debut.
debut was
Yeah,
good. And
I started bum licking him
yeah.
after the debut. I was like, this guy's sick. Let's go. Some pious region. Let's go, baby. And since then, it's been like 0.7 Simon over there. So yeah, they're all winnable. But yeah, it's actually unfortunate that they play Heroic. Then realistically, in terms of seeding, they should be opposite. They should be who is it? Like we're Mousers in my eyes, anyway. Or at least we're like, Furia are, and then they could have had that other like bracket, and then met them at like the upper final or whatever. But
so you have the S tier, you have G2 Heroic, you have the sort of the tier 1 of like the Liquids, the Vitalities, the Cloud9s, that sort of level of team. Maybe you could say FaZe and Navi now because they aren't really there yet at the moment either. And then you have the tier of the teams which can very easily make an upset of the tier 1 teams, but also don't have what it takes to actually win events. Complexity, Fnatic, Furia, Mouse, like the list goes on of those, particularly OG, NIP even. They haven't sorted themselves out with config yet. Like it's actually such a huge list. ENCE, Spirit, Astralis, Spirit are nowhere right now. Like Spirit, I haven't seen anything from them for ages. ENCE as well. Like it's such a long list of teams that it can make a huge jump up in form and rankings if they can get a big result at a couple of these events in a row, because it's all there for the taking.
I agree, 100%. I think you raised a good point there, Annie. I would have coasted past them, but I'm loving a bit of complexity at the moment. They're also as well, their Counter Strike is very fun to watch. Like it's just so enjoyable.
Very.
Like
they don't save.
I know.
Article today. They're the team that saves the least in all of
They'll take those
30.
2v4s because they can win 2v4s.
Yeah.
That's the craziest part. They actually believe that they can win them.
That confidence is so fun.
Yeah, it's a hell of a drug. Don't get me wrong.
I guess we can move out again. We're kind of already talking about it onto Pro League more officially in a sense. We've had Group A wrapped up. That's of course as of the time of recording, we're on a break for a couple of days. So Group A is done. We've seen some pretty good performances overall. I think Cloud9 looked very respectable. I mean, we already can talk about that G2 victory was really decent from them. G2, of course, off the back of it when they were in that kind of that lower bit, they were good. And then Fnatic, of course, in the last chance are great. I'm gonna say that Fnatic Eternal Fire game was sick, like so good. Like that was like one of the best ones.
Clutch.
Yeah, one of the best ones I've watched in a while. Also, Fash's knife on Overpass was just hilarious because he knifed them half the time. It's real tilting. But no, yeah, I think so far Pro League. First of all, we talked about the Pro League group, but one thing I just want to mention, being broadcasters, we can obviously talk about it. format and show layout, I think this is the best season of Pro League I've ever watched so far. Like the show, the way the studio set up, how loose it is, like that's it, like it's been enjoyable. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I never used to like watching Pro League because it was 5 weeks long of the same exact format where it's super serious, and it was just like it was way too serious than it should have been for how long of a tournament it was. So it was just, like, and everyone would say this, it was just too much. You just couldn't watch that much Counter-Strike for 5 weeks long. It just they couldn't keep you there. But now with how the shows are, and then there's desk segments, but it's like a Beyond the Summit couch segment. Like it's so
Rest in peace, Beyond the Summit.
rest in peace as of today.
Spirit lives on.
As of today.
God.
Rest in
Very
peace.
sad.
Yeah. Just as we mentioned them, we will just take a moment. Beyond the Summer, thank you for your good time. Yeah, exactly.
Get the candles out, yeah.
As of today, rest in peace. But they're encapsulating that sort of energy. Actually, I would say, and everyone used to be like, "Oh my god, I miss Beyond the Summer, I miss those sort of things," and now we've kind of got it back in a way. I mean, I would say all we need is the players back. We kind of already do have the players back. We had Hooksy on for a cast, which was actually quite enjoyable to listen to. We had the Fnatic boys jump on the desk and we're just talking about like random stuff, and that was also really enjoyable as well. Like it's been very nice, entertaining constantly. Like I normally couldn't sit there and watch 7-8 hours of CS a day, but I can with Pro League because they just keep you entertained. So
I just really like the fluidity of kind of analysts and casters and hosts kind of all interchanging roles. Nobody's actually set to one specific role.
Yeah.
Like you see Harry Hugo sitting on the couch, you'd have YNK on the casts, and all of them are very competent individuals on all of these cases. And since all of these different roles are not the kind of go like you got to be your S tier face, it allows them to kind of relax and enjoy these different styles of broadcast talent. And so you saw YNK do a bit of play-by-play in one bit, and you also saw Harry and Hugo doing some great stuff on the couch just in general. Like
Agreed.
I like some of the segments that they brought up with the Sponge and Freya. So I think they've all done just a very good job at showcasing their personality, but also showing how moldable they can be for broadcast in general.
The hiring's perfect, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
They have got the guys. They've got the jack of all trades people. The only people actually I think they are missing, Scrawny and Launders will be perfect in this. Of course, we know they can't do it, but like this would fit them to a T because those boys on that couch would be. Oh, they'd be a joy to listen to. Just listen to those guys. Just shoot the shit about CS is as fun as it is already. Yeah. So they have got that style of Counter-Strike like casting that I envy, which is conversational casting. That's all I'll always say. That's my dream style of casting is conversational casting. And Harry and Hugo do it really well. Even not as much, but Spongy Machine also can do it quite well. But Scrawny Launders, they're probably as good as it gets. Like when it comes to that, where they're obviously just best mates and they can just it's best mates watching CS. But those boys would also be perfect in that sort of Beyond the Summer-esque environment. But aside from that, I don't think anybody looks out of place. Everybody is like bitching. And then the more like slightly more analytical guys. So like for example, Kassad, fantastic at what he does. One of the smartest minds we've got in CS, but he wouldn't fit this sort of at early doors where it's very more relaxed and chilled. At playoffs, fine, it gets a bit more serious towards playoffs. But at the early stages, someone like a Kassar, maybe not as much because they're extremely analytical in the way they are. Or like a Peacemaker, for example, great on the desk because love listening to what he says because he's obviously unbelievably smart. I mean, he can't be there because he's a coach now. But this relaxed style, they've got the perfect hires for it.
I think the only thing that I'd be worried about is that they've been throwing so many segments out that I'm hoping that they can keep it up for the
5
remainder.
weeks. Yeah.
Right? Like it's gonna be tough to do it, but if they can pull it off, I think this could be again one of the best seasons we've had. I still think I will always have a special place for just the finals of EPL that they had before, where it would take place in like Odense or
yeah,
and stuff like that. I think some of those events have been one of the more memorable ones. But I'll gladly take something a little bit more kind of laid back. As long as they commit to this for a month.
If you can't have a Pro League with a crowd, this is the next best thing.
Exactly. So I guess we can talk about the teams a little bit more. I was really happy and surprised with Eternal Fire. I know we've talked about it a number of times with the kind of changes that they've had that we would consider this Eternal Fire to be one of the weakest Eternal Fire iterations that they had prior to actually playing. But funnily enough, this is the EF that's actually getting the best results
Agreed.
this org has ever had, which is just shocking. I mean, you have Emor on the op, and Major still calling, but you don't have Woxic, and you're expecting that kind of bringing back Xcloud and Calyx is not going to be enough firepower for them to go over the top because they're just too supportive across the board. But I mean, there's a bit of chemistry here. They figured out a little bit of their map pool. They started punishing some of these teams, and they started taking Fnatic close on both the times that they played. And they won CCT. So like overall, I'm very impressed that we actually have a turnaround from them. I think this is kind of their peak, to be completely honest with you, just because I don't think they have a good enough opera. I don't think Imor can op.
Agreed.
And I think they need another piece, maybe like, hint somebody from Sangal. But other than that, I think that they should be very happy with what they produced in the last few months here.
I agree. I think Eternal Fire actually look, pretty competent. They especially with what?
Been playing very well.
Was it 15 changes or something like that they had? Like 15 or something stupid in the space of like 3 months. So yeah, for those guys to actually be competitive and actually taking, teams like Fnatic, who, they're a little bit shaky. We don't have to beat around the bush there, but, still take a team who, Fnatic definitely the favourites coming into those sort of games and take them, to a fairly decent distance. Yeah, I'll give them their credit. So, not bad at all. It does make me really excited about how things, pan out in towards Group B, and then, of course, further down the line towards Group C as well, because, it can be very, very well. I think Group C feels very one-sided for the most part, but it does make it quite exciting, like so far what we've seen. And playoffs, when it comes around the corner, way back when, in a couple of weeks or whatever, then again, looks really good because you can start building those narratives about who's the big teams going in towards the major, who are going to be competent, essentially.
Yeah, I think I've hoped for Eternal Fire success for a long time, and just haven't really known what roster it's going to be. But I was actually questioning Calyx and bringing him back, but his stats honestly recently are kind of like a sea of green. He's been playing really, really well. He's almost been outperforming Xantares on a number of occasions as well, which really does tell a tale. Like, he's been superb. It makes me happy to see him do well. And as you say, the fact that they took Fnatic so close, and I mentioned Fnatic, they've been a little bit iffy. They're still getting results, Fnatic, which it sort of reaffirms my belief that they're still like the tier 1.5 gatekeeper team. Right now, which is why I was so impressed with Complexity beating them. I think it's great to see them take them so close, and of course winning CCT like they did. They did it in the longest style possible, and I think obviously with all the issues that the country's going through, Turkey obviously having a few very, very sad problems, they're sort of flying the flag and doing the country proud for their CS team right now, because this is probably a good sign for them going into possibly more major stickers, which would probably be a big boon for them, of course, as well. Exactly. And I think in general for this group, they're actually the team that I was most impressed. They didn't even make it, right? But they're still one of the teams I was most impressed with out of all of them.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I mean, anything more probably before we move on?
I think those are the highest points.
Cloud9, good. Happy for them.
Yeah.
They beat G2. The streak's over. Like, the fact that they do seem like they're the kind of team that, while the consistency's not there, they can just pop up with Shearer and Axile, just absolutely dominate. And they did that against G2. They stopped the streak. They beat Outsiders as well. 2 very convincing wins. Beating Outsiders, even with the current Outsiders, is very impressive. Even though Kyron isn't as good, everyone knows that Outsiders are still very hard to beat, and they are still consistently beating teams like Fnatic, for example, very easily. So that's good. I think we can summarize it by saying the teams that should have made it through in this group have.
Yeah.
So
it's the best way of putting it. I guess on top of that, we can move on to kind of my segment in a way, which is
go for it.
Neo's highlights and lowlights. Highlights, we'll start on a positive note. Highlights, Spirit Academy. Oh my God. We're talking about kind of streaky teams in towards tier 2. And this is 99% probably also just going to be another streaky team. But we did this already with Copenhagen Flames. We spoke about them during their streak. We spoke about Aurora during their streak. And I guess we kind of have to talk about Spirit Academy. Well, not exactly a streak, so to say, in terms of, they're not completely unbeaten, but they've been winning the vast majority of their games, and I'll get up there kind of their record now, their matches of the some of the teams they've been taken down. But since the turn of the year, it has been some pretty notable victories under their belt where they've been finishing very decently. Lost to Monty in the RMR, but overall in the open quals, but it's still not bad by any means. They took down Copenhagen Flames, one of the teams, of course, that take them down. They finished first in CCT literally just a few days ago, like 5 days ago or whatever, where they took down Game Elysian in that final. Yeah, and you look at the, they lost to Eyeballers early into it, and then, beat FTW, Into the Breach, Tricked, Big, Falcons, iNation, and Game Elysian. I mean, that is absolutely bonkers. And then in Challenger Melbourne open quals, they lost in the third map to Honorous, but they beat Bait, which is an RMR team. So, I got to say, I mean, for me, this team has looked sick. Like, I've just really enjoyed watching them. And realistically, we know who the big hitters are. It's Donk and Artfrost. Donk is 16 years old. And Artfrost, who is one of the best.
Donk is a huge dong.
Yeah, he's an absolute god. And then Artfrost, who is, I think he's the oldest on the team. He's 21. But he's the best on the team comfortably. And when we look towards the We Play Academy League, especially those last 2 seasons, when everybody was talking about the likes of Headtrick, for example, how he's absolutely farming, Artfrost was very commonly in those conversations because in terms of rating, he wasn't far behind Headtrick. He was only a small margin behind him. Headtrick, yes, he was putting up monster numbers, but that Spirit Academy side finished second in the last 2 We Players. They both, they should have won actually one of them, the last one, but they finished second in both of them, which is incredible. Bear in mind they started off with a very similar roster, and they were finishing 13th overall or whatever, and just bombing out of groups. So for me, I think a massive highlight between Spirit Academy. They actually just play amazing Counter-Strike. It's not kind of like CIS Counter-Strike where it's very slow and they just play for last 20-second executes. They are just flying out the gate and farming.
I am so excited to see more of Donk. I think he won FPL as well.
Last month or 2 months ago. Yeah. He was 15 then as well, by the way. I think he's the youngest person ever to win it. Yeah.
So I'm just so excited to see more of these CIS talents get opportunities. As soon as they come of age, they'll get that call up by a number of these teams. I wouldn't even be surprised if they go to these tier 2 teams and just hard carry them to the RMRs.
Yeah.
Make a name for themselves there, and then
like Wrinkle, basically. Same way Wrinkle they were
very, very, very excited. This is not going to be something that we talk about immediately, like in the next 6 months, but it's something that for everybody to keep in the back of their minds as these guys continue to develop. Maybe a year from now, a year and a half from now, they'll get that call up. It'll be a very Monacy-esque, Headtrick-esque situation, as you said,
I'm just saying, one thing.
Go ahead.
Wonderful needs to watch his back. Keep up these stinkers. Artfrost will take his place. I'm not even lying. No joke. Artfrost's a little bit older, a little bit more, well, not more experienced, let's be honest, but a little bit older, maybe a little bit more mature. If Wonderful keeps having kind of iffy performances, which they've ever been, Wonderful when he was in tier 2 playing like Trasco and Hellraisers and whatever, which is obviously as expected. But if he starts to drop off, I'm sure Artfrost is number 1 on that list. I can't think of any CIS AWPer who's, at the moment who's that close. And I don't think he probably does have quite a, if he was to go somewhere else, let's say Fours love a good youngster coming through. Like a Donk and Artfrost, I can see them in Fours all day under Jerry's leadership. But if Wonderful is a bit of a stinker, they'll just call him up from the academy. He's already there. He's already contracted them. They don't have to buy him out. It's free.
And I was going to say that Spirit in general, as you say, the main roster, it's not just Wonderful that's been looking a bit on and off. It's the whole roster that's been looking on and off. They have not been looking that great at all recently. They got a world ranking of 13, but well, that's kind of deceiving. I mean, they lost to Movistar in CCT.
Says it all.
They lost to Ents there as well. Mm-hmm. And the only win really that you can really talk about in Kato, if you include the play-in, you've got Greyhound and Sprout, whatever. Yeah. And you've got Big, whatever. There's no good wins for them there at all. And I really do think this roster's kind of we've seen its peak. I think. I mean, they're always a team. They're kind of like I always said they're kind of like the modern flip side. They'll show up out of nowhere and just ruin some team's day in a major and make the semis out of nowhere and ruin certain pick'ems. Mine, but
Silver coin.
Yeah, shut up. But yeah, this I think you're absolutely right in saying that they've got a very, very good upgrade path coming in, and I will have to give some props to a former main roster Spirit player, Sotvic.
Yeah.
He was coaching them for a while, and he's 28 now, but he's playing with
I'm
them.
shocked
And
he's
I
still
have to
playing,
say,
Yeah.
yeah, I really think that Sotvic is honestly one of the big reasons behind Spirit Academy having a decent run in like high tier 2 of late is because they've got actually have a very, very experienced head at the helm, not just in the coach role, as an actual player in the server. I think that's helping them to no end. But yeah, I do hope for Spirit's case they sort themselves out. However, they've got an upgrade path.
Side note as well, the big kind of test as well for Spirit to see if they actually need to be make changes, because they've been very floppy. They're opening games against Astralis, right, in Pro League. I mean, that's the big test.
That'll be a spicy one.
If they can't beat Astralis, especially with how meh Astralis are right now, then Spirit will then start looking, okay, fuck, we need to make changes. Artfrost has been absolutely dominating. Maybe we give him the call up.
How does he work in the system, though? That's the thing. Like,
yeah, of course.
Completely different style of an opera, right? It's a completely different style of opera.
Yeah.
But like, there's still system-based things, right? Like, Sotvic, probably a very loose calling system as it's in tier 2, and they want their stars to run right.
Yeah.
As opposed to Chopper in tier 1, who I would assume, as the old saying I think we all use, is he probably runs a bit of a tight ship. So
yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think I'm very interested to see how these young players. Who's the next one from the next Munazy who can step up and actually perform not just at that level 2 but at the big tier 1 S tier events too, because they're few and far between, those special talents.
Yeah, I mean, Wonderful's performances, you look at it, and for the most part, it is, that sea of green, like I like to say, but it's just the fact that this Spirit side, they want to be competing the way that they have competed in the past, where they've actually been, deep runs in big S tier tournaments. They're not there at the moment. I think most people kind of look at them, not a free win, but definitely S tier, A tier, top tier teams, tier 1 teams will see Spirit as a free win for the most part, because they're not all there the same way we do with like Movistar, for example, who used to be very competitive, as we know, or Astralis as of the past or whatever. They kind of look like a bit of not a free win, but on paper we should take them down kind of thing. So I think their Pro League group will say a lot about if this team needs to make changes, because they're not the ones to just sit on their backsides and just let it happen kind of thing. They're very proactive when it comes to changes, and of course they've got already 2 out of the top 3 youngsters, but if one of them isn't panning out, they can just dip into the pool again, right? So I don't know. For me, I think it's really good to see Spirit Academy. Also, it's just really good to see Spirit keep hold of Spirit Academy, because we play, it's no longer a thing, at least for the time being, with obviously the kind of geopolitical situation happening. So a lot of the teams have just got rid of their academy teams. OG got rid of their academy team. A lot of the teams just got rid of theirs because, what's the point, right? There's no tournaments for them to compete in. But it's good to see Spirit Academy kept hold of them, because they actually, have really making names for themselves. And this, in a I guess worst case scenario, they could just sell them on for cash, the same way we've seen with like the Manesi, for example, or whatnot. They can just get, or Head Trick, get a bit of cash from them, because
plus 600k.
Yeah, exactly. Because if Artfrost keeps dominating tier 2 the way he has been, if Donk, who's 16, keeps farming the way he has, big teams will eventually notice and come knocking. I think obviously it probably doesn't help. I don't know what their English is like. I'm just going to make the assumption that it's not great, or they don't speak English. So it obviously limits it a little bit. But even still, teams will still come knocking. All I'm saying, I'm taking Donk over Nipple Boy all day. That's what I'm saying. So I'm just throwing that one out there. But that's me. But they're my highlight. Anything to add to Spirit Academy?
Yeah, no, I'm just excited for their future. I think that I think Spirit definitely have their fair share of issues. If Siren is the rifler that you're looking towards to put up big performances, you have a problem. And so I think that I think this restructuring could do Spirit a lot of help.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they should be dipping into Spirit Academy yet.
No.
Just because I don't want them to go too young, but it is definitely a prospective thing in the future that they can definitely dip into Spirit Academy if they want. It's not expensive for them by any means, and they can have kind of a steady stream of firepower along the way. But you might as well get into your low light as well if you want.
Yeah, low light. I mean,
I feel like I feel like this has been your low light before somehow. I'm not sure
It probably has. It probably
There's
has.
been a lot of people's lowlights for a little while now.
I actually think this is a pretty good conversation because I'm not coming in so like obviously so my low light is gonna be Evil Geniuses, but I'm not coming in to dog the team because I actually have no problems against the team. Obviously the performances haven't been great, but you know they've had so many changes and whatnot. But I think the real conversation, obviously there's a lot going on at the moment with Kassad's bounty, for example. Very funny, just from an outside perspective. Giving a grand to whichever team knocked them out. It was Team 1 in the end, I think it was, who knocked them out, which is quite funny. And he actually paid up as well, and they went skiing, as they went on a ski trip with it. So, it's very funny. There's a lot of conversations happening. And I'm going to find it in a second because I actually forgot to get it up. But there's a really good tweet from Yanko who encapsulates like kind of my thoughts about why this is essentially my low light. Because essentially I don't think the players themselves are have done anything wrong in terms of why they're getting so much hate and backlash. It's the management. We all know this. It's the upper management are just fucking terrible. Like I'm not talking about decision making when it comes to the team. I'm just talking about publicity. These guys they're in a space where they're bringing in youngsters. They're actually abiding by the blueprint project and trying out youngsters. Which is good to see. That's actually very healthy for the North American Counter-Strike scene. Granted, the performances haven't always been fantastic, but what we're saying is I don't think we ever expected them. No one's bringing in Hex and thinking, okay, this is a top 10 team now. No one ever said that. I think you're deluded if you ever kind of made those conversations. Realistically, Automatic is the only one who is consistently like a top performer on this team. But, no one ever expected them to be world beaters. But it's very easy to hate on people and teams and stuff when they're very loud. The same way we all, I'm assuming here, but most people hate Jake Paul because he chats shit all the time. So seeing him get punched around in a ring for 8 rounds was fantastic. It made my evening. Him losing, it was brilliant because he just chats so much shit. And it's good to see these people like get put in their place. But the only thing is, it's not the team who are chatting shit. They're actually just trying to knock it down. You see Devorborg doing these, these tweets every now and again. Like, this is the lowest point of my life. Like, I'm really sorry. Like, we're working on this and whatnot. They obviously the team are doing their thing. But then you've got fucking GamerDoc, who's singled out every analyst at Kato and said, you're all bad because you're not saying about how good EG's blueprint project is. You're actually all you're talking about is how Heroic underperformed, which is a valid conversation when the number 1 team at the end of the year come into the first tournament of the year and lose to a terrible team. Obviously, the talking point is always going to be, oh my God, Heroic, what the fuck happened? Basically, how have you lost this? You're the favourites. But then, that step out of the echo chamber has become a bit of a meme now. And then, of course, coincidentally or whatever you want to say, she's gone radio silence now. We haven't heard her say anything about this team. They've gone from winning that one game against Heroic and then winning it was like 8-match losing streak or something. Again, against all teams that they on paper should lose to because they're better teams or a little bit more together at the moment or whatever. And she's decided now is her time. She's going to go quiet. She's not going to back up the blueprint project. She's picked her time for silence, and she's just hung these poor players out to dry. And I actually genuinely feel bad for them because they should just never check social media because it's just not worth it, because there just be like a myriad of just like hate and horrible comments and whatnot. So I mean, my low light isn't exactly the team itself because everyone knows the team's not performing well. I don't really care that much, but I care more about the management just hanging these poor guys out to dry, basically, and leaving them to be the ones apologizing and being like, I'm sorry, like we know we're playing shit. I'm like, we're trying, basically. And the upper management pick their times. They talk when they're up, but when they're down, they just leave the players out to dry. That's what I hate. That's the bit. That's why I want to put this as my low light. I'm not putting the low light as a team. I can talk about the team all the one. They're not playing well. Who cares, right? It happens. They're not a good team at the moment. Fair enough, whatever. But it's the management is the reason why I wanted to kind of throw them out here.
Well, there are a couple more things that are probably added a bit more fuel to the fire as well. There was, I think, Mad Cow, their manager, also wanted to message and kind of berate a little bit. I think he said like, "You must be fun at parties" or something like that.
Oh my God! Yeah, it's a Kassad.
And then, that was just completely unwarranted and not necessary. And then. There was just NAF, of course, the NAF interview, just him mentioning that like the management of EG is the worst that he's ever had a conversation.
Oh yes, yeah.
So I think that there's just all these signs that point to the management not having an identity as to how they want to operate their Counter-Strike division. I think that's just what's very worrying to me as a North American fan, is that it was always Complexity, EG, and Liquid that were kind of considered as the top North American organizations, and you would always get competition out of them and have them go toe to toe, and they've had consistent results in years past. But now that they've lost, I mean, even honestly, from EG's inception, they kind of bought the NRG lineup, and ever since then, they've kind of taken a very great budget roster that they got a lot out of. You know, they got a lot of tournament wins out of that EG roster, the NRG roster.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they started selling away parts, the actual identity and ideas that they had thrown around were not anywhere anything kind of cohesive in any sense. They kind of
Agreed.
just gave the reins to incompetent people that shouldn't be kind of leading the way, and then they've kind of just said, okay, well, whatever happens, and we'll just see how it goes. We put our faith in a couple of people. I don't want to say I don't want to name names because I think it'd just be like rude for no reason. But I think that the people that know who they are, like, I mean, I'm sure they're aware of like kind of how they've tarnished the organization's kind of reputation at this
100%.
point.
Yeah.
But I'm not even gonna blame Wiz and Hext in particular. I think that these guys have gotten the opportunities that they've gotten, and I'm happy that they get to come up and they get to try playing against the very best, and you could see that there's at least potential there, that, you know, maybe you give them a couple of years to play in tier 1.5, and tier 2 maybe they can find their way back into a tier 1 North American team. But of course, the flip side of that is that you also look at players like Breezy and Automatic, who you can definitely see that their motivation is waning, and stuff like that. And that's what's really worrying to me, when you've got Malik and Valence and Vorborg on your coaching staff, and you've got unmotivated players, and you don't have an idea of what comes next. You don't have a game plan of how are we going to fix this? How are we going to move forward and try to make the RMR? Because that is our base level performance that we require as Evil Geniuses as an org. We are a premier organization. Our stickers need to be in the game year after year, major cycle after major cycle. And if that's not happening, then that's a major problem. And so all of these things compounded on one another, it's just very disappointing that North America as a region is losing just the kind of star power of Evil Geniuses as an organization now in North America. Now we're basically down to 2. I can't necessarily talk about Evil Geniuses in that same light, and the fact that they've lost all of that kind of historical respect and appreciation is just very, very sad. So I hope that certain people, I hope there's a restructuring of some sort, because I think this organization desperately needs it.
Agreed.
So they can get their identity in check, because I don't know if this is a team that wants to rely on old players, which they can totally do. If they want to commit to that, all power to them. If they want to commit to just restructuring with all young players and commit to the EG white black thing, sure, you can do that too. But it can't be whatever mix this is, because this mix just doesn't.
Just to add, I found the tweet, and I'll get it up now and sort of just kind of read it out for you guys. But so it started with Scrawny just saying, so the remainder of Evil Genius season more than likely consists of bottoming out of their kind of pro league group, getting knocked out of the showdown, and then like no Katowice, no Rio, no Major, no Dallas ? Of course, we now know, and we'll get to that a little bit later, and we can talk about that when it comes to it, I think, a little bit more. And no Washington, right? And then Yanko kind of quote retweets this with the comment that basically encapsulates what I've been trying to say, but I couldn't really find the words to put it. And the way to this person on Reddit has put it is, their non-players start shit on socials and then ghost, leaving the players to hold in the bag, utterly and completely incompetent management. And that's like the best way I can explain it, because that's exactly it. You know, you see the players aren't the ones chatting shit. Like, for the most part, a lot of these players are good, and the only ones who are chatting shit in a way is Hex, but in the server, which is what you want to see.
That doesn't matter,
He's a
right?
showman. Yeah, exactly. And it's really, like, people will always misunderstand how good it is to have that. Like, that is amazing entertainment. And also when he backs it up, it's even better, because you're like, oh my god, like, this is sick. That's good. Players should be proactive and, have a voice in the server in that way. But none of these players are coming out on socials, chatting shit, calling out analysts on the Kato desk and saying, you guys, basically saying you guys are bad, talk about us more. Basically, none of these players are saying this. It's the management, the people who aren't players, who don't have any effect, putting this pressure on the players by chatting shit all over social media, fighting with analysts and arguing with them, and calling them, oh, you must be fun at parties, and beefing that is just in the same way that we always talk about incompetency in management, like Astralis, the cream of the crop when it comes to incompetency, and one of the most vocal people ever. We already know about whatever his name was, beefing. What was he saying? Like the director of communications, whatever, was beefing with.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean, right? The Astralis guy.
Yes.
Right.
Like Stern or whatever his name is. That is incompetency, because he's just putting pressure, because then now analysts and just spectators now like, well, fuck it, I'm preying on their downfall. And this happens to EG. They've got this like legion of people and analysts and commentators being like, well, if these guys are going to call me out and say I'm bad and whatever, I am then going to in my own right have a vendetta. Hence why Kassar did, of course. I mean, obviously there's external factors in a way behind it, but yeah, I mean, that kind of encapsulates kind of how I was feeling, and I actually feel bad for the players, because it puts pressure on them in a way that they never signed on for. They didn't sign on for this sort of pressure. They from the get-go, this whole blueprint project malarkey, it was always, we're rebuilding. This is for the future. And they've not been given now the future. If I feel like, it definitely in my opinion, and I'm a hater, you know me. I love my hate on EG because it's funny. But and more just because it annoys Paladin. That's basically it, essentially. But I confidently say, like, if this gamer doc person, for example, hadn't been super vocal all over Twitter saying, get a step out of the echo chamber, whatever, after one win, which was like, I'm not saying it was a fluke, they actually played quite well, but heroic,
8 clutches.
Yeah, heroic underperformed. We all know that. Not performed the way they have since. And of course, in that tournament for the rest of it, it was just one hiccup at the start. But yeah, it just put this pressure on them. Not in a similar way, but in a kind of way when we look towards that, kind of that Henry G Cloud9, there was so much pressure put on those players because we all know their wages, which I still think is a really good thing that we knew their wages. I think it's a very open and vocal thing, but it came back to bite them. Wox gets one bad performance, 600k straight away. Like, so, it's a different kind of pressure that I guess the average CSGO player isn't used to. And I feel like if this middle management or upper management hadn't been so vocal, they would not be on our radars in a way. We would still say, yes, of course, they're playing badly, but we would at least give them the benefit of the doubt. I definitely would, and say, oh, okay, well, they're bringing in youngsters. They're trying out Hex and Wiz. They brought Neil over, a little bit rogue, but generally speaking, they're building for the future. We're getting some decent youngsters coming in towards the academy teams as well, who are starting to show promise. George Snort's looking actually pretty talented, to be fair to him. Maybe there's a world in the future the team could be competitive once again. But if they hadn't have been so vocal after one win and then completely ghost, then I don't think there will be such a vendetta. But now they have such a target on their backs, because everybody, most people want to see them lose just so they can spite the upper management. But then it doesn't matter, because the upper management is still going to ghost, and the only people who are left to hold the spite are the players, unfairly in my opinion. So that's the thing. That's why I put them as my low light. But it's not the players themselves. Yeah, they're playing bad, but it's a rebuild for the future. But it's just because of just incompetence at such a high level, and they're degrading years of history and what is, as you said, Paladin, a premium or once premium organization who now can't even qualify through the RMRs, who are losing to Team One and struggling against Mythic and whatnot. So yeah, I don't know. Trav, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my only thought really, because you've covered, I think both of you have covered everything that I all agree with, and also. I've also, of course, said things in the past as well that would have just been me repeating myself. But what I will say is, I think just the immediate improvement to EG. What I think, you have obviously the issue of them having 3 teams, right? Three men's teams, which is a problem because you're even though John G put up a small thread about it recently, there's a problem with the fact that EG White barely play.
Yeah, because they only play domestically. Is that the ones, or the EG White, the domestic ones?
Cups.
Yeah,
play some cash cups, and they played like 2 international events. And Johnny's like, "Oh, we've had some great opportunities, blah blah." But I think
played
honestly,
CCT as well, but
they play CCT,
but they don't even win the CCT events, right? So they're barely even playing.
Who wins CCT?
Nouns, ATK.
Ooh, okay, fair enough, right.
So
right.
that's the issue as well. Like for me, I think if EG were going to do something with like collecting, a lot of players in the scene, they shouldn't have gone so hard and got 3. Like, what you do is you go the normal, like, accepted route of sorting out your main team to the best of your ability, then having an academy team, and then plonking it in tier 2 EU, maybe in we play events or like that. Yeah. There's that missed games event, right? Like that missed games event.
It's like the new academy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like more like the academy league at the moment. If you just plonk them in there, ship them off to to an international experience and get some LAN experience, that is the way to go. And I think, honestly, there's argument to be made that E Black right now could easily beat the main EG.
Like, I think so. I generally think so.
The pieces of EG Black are really good right now.
My boy Junior back in the server.
I'm gonna look at the roster right now. So I think for me at the moment, if I was to take control of EG, I would minus Breezy, I'd plus George, I'd take Wiz or Hex, one of the two, because you still want an NA core, right? You want to have the identity being North America.
Yeah.
I'd take either one of Hex or Wiz and put them back in EG Black, and I'd take, as I said, I'd take George instead of Breezy, and I'd also pick up someone like Mantu, for example. So let's say you put Wiz back, and then you maybe you figured out something with EG White. Now you actually do have that third team, so Junior can stay in EG Black and Wiz can go to EG White or something, and then you drop someone from EG White, maybe Pone alone, even though he's good. It's sad, but he's older now. Like, that has to be one of the options I think you go for. If you want to have 3 teams, pick up someone that's got pedigree, like a Mantu. I'm not sure if you'd even want to go there during the situation, of course. There's probably something a lot more than that. Maybe even like a Mouse if Torji keeps underperforming, for example. But like someone like him who can just give a team,
even Searson would be fine.
Someone who can give the main team some fresh perspective and fresh, power, rather than just something that's been dredged up through the academies. I'm not saying that they're all bad, of course, because we know that George is probably going to be the next one to be called up at some point.
True.
And minus Breezy plus George is probably the next move. It's the most sensible move. It has to happen at some point for me. So yeah, I mean, for me, the one thing you can do right now to improve EG is you minus Breezy, you plus George, and you get Breezy to go plus Valorant somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who cares? He's done.
Side note, I do want to throw one thing out there. This is not my viewpoint, so I want to give the credit. So it was a guy called Rory, or on Twitter, I think his name's One Festive, I think is that. And he did a very, very good thread, and I really liked it. And I don't have it on hand, but I want to give him the credit for this. So he did a thread saying, okay, cool, you got 3 teams, sick. But why are your teams the way they are? They're so old. Like, if you've got these teams just building for the future, why have you got like late 20s, early 30s players, isn't it? It doesn't make sense. Like, this is not a build for the future. These are some of these guys are washed or are very soon going to be washed. And I thought his thread was actually really good because he just talks about inherently they're not building for the future because these teams aren't built for the future.
All they want to do is lock up talent,
so they have to pay for them.
North America.
Exactly.
And you look at kind of all these imploding rosters. We can make, I think North America can make so many competent rosters, in at least at the ECL level, to at least compete for kind of that spot that Evo Geniuses is hogging.
Yeah.
If EG White were free agents, they'd be like either one.
I don't even think they would have to stay. I don't even think they would have to stay together. Like I think Jonji could go elsewhere. I think Ponalone could go elsewhere.
That's the point.
There's so many good lineups that you could make. I think, and I think Evo Genius is very aware of that.
They don't want the competition because they can't handle it.
Right. That's what I feel like the kind of move that they're trying to make here is lock up all the talent, make it so that they make the money selling these players. And then
where are they going to sell
them
to,
with the money?
Like, who can afford these guys? Because like the
America doesn't have any organizations to sell it.
Exactly.
That's the worst
the
part.
next most competent team is Nouns, right? And are they even an org? Are they an org?
Yeah, they are.
They are an org, right? They're
crypto
org, right? Okay, well that's in itself. That's going to fumble in about 2 minutes. So that speaks for itself. And then after they got ATK,
which is that org is also imploding.
Yeah, so. Exactly. So I mean, what they've done is they talk about like saving NACS. They haven't saved it. They've hurt it. They've actively hurt it because the way you save things, like with anything, competitive nature. Same way if why there's rules in big business about anti-monopolies. You're not allowed to be monopolies in big business for that exact reason because you can just fuck people over at prices. But what they've done here, Jermaine, there's no competition because they're trying to farm this money. But I'm 90% sure they're just burning cash. From my understanding, those EG top tier 1 players on 40 grand a week, 40 grand a month. Sorry. they're on stonking wages, or at least I know for the facts like Breeze and Automatic, they're on about 40 grand a month. So there's no way they're making money because they're not competing in any tournaments anymore. They're not making anything. They're not getting any sticker money. So there's no way they're making any of that back. They've got Dallas, which we'll come to a little bit later, but even then they probably will bomb out a pro league realistically. If they get more than 2 wins, I'd be super surprised. And when we get towards Dallas, same thing there. When we look at the team list, it's not exactly like these guys are doing well. So I would implore people to go and look at that festive tweaks. I think it's actually very good. He just talks about like how they're matey, it's not competitive, and they're essentially just like the old rosters. Like if they want to actually be an academy team or kind of for the future and whatever, they should be prioritizing youngsters coming through and whatnot. But then instead they've got, like you mentioned, Trav Pernalone. He's still actually not a bad player, but he's not getting any younger. He's definitely not getting any younger. And there's, it's going to be a time where he gets washed. I actually think he's a pretty decent player. But yeah, you're spot on, right? He's not getting younger. So yeah, I don't know. That's why they're my low light, essentially. I just really think I just like the middle management. Basically.
I'm going to end off this segment by saying, genuinely, the thing that sort of says it all is I think if we put our 3 minds together, we could come up with either 2 teams or even 3 teams that would do a lot better ourselves. I agree. For all of EG's teams, and that says it all for me. Yeah. Anyway,
RMR. Well, can one of you? We'll start with Americas. So I guess Paladin can kind of lead the charge here. And while you do, I'm gonna fill my water up. So take it away, boys.
So the North America closed qualifiers were pretty exciting. Obviously, Evil Geniuses did not make it. It's I guess the segue that we can have here. Team 1 took that last spot. But we had a couple of shocks. Detonate. Coach is Mix. I'm sure you guys knew that he was the former coach of Cloud9, and then Nordavin as well, now coaching a couple of ECL talents that are kind of like nomadic in nature. I'm super excited to see just them have a debut on the bigger stage. We had a surprise mix team of which is again just a bunch of individuals from North America, again upsetting EG within the qualifiers. But that's basically it. And I mean, in terms of the teams that missed out, ATK is a big one that we kind of expected to show up beyond just EG. They were kind of the up and coming team within our region in particular. And then in South America, it is actually quite surprising that I believe we're missing a couple of teams. Let me pull it up because I don't want to forget. Oh yes, 9Z, of course. 9Z and 00 Nation played their final game as the decider, and 9Z will not be at the major. Plano will also not be at the major, and Arctic actually attended last major cycle. They will also not be there, but instead we have Paqueta, which is actually a pretty exciting team just because I just like some of these players. Obviously you have Yell and Destiny who have been around the block for ages now, and then Nithon, formerly of Pain Gaming, did some good work there. And then Venom Zera played on Young Gods, which was a Godsense Academy roster. They were also super exciting.
I heard Pain.
And then, Pain. I was talking about Nithon. Nithon from formerly of Pain.
Yeah.
And yeah, other than that, I mean, I think it's going to be a very competitive region because we have one less spot this year. And I think there are a lot of teams that are going to vie for those last couple of spots. You got MIBR, Pain, Imperial, Fluxo, 00 Nation. And
I like Fluxo a lot.
Yeah, and maybe you can
they're
throw
competitive. They're actually, from what I've seen recently, they're actually decent.
Yeah, and maybe you can throw in a Team 1 announce at the tail end there. Yeah, I think this is going to be a very, very good RMR.
Good stuff. Yeah, I'll just I'll segue onto sort of EU and some of the teams that I think about being involved.
Start with
actually
A.
I'm gonna go with A first. I think obviously this is where our UK boys are at with Into the Breach and Viperia, and sort of live news. We do know that Viperia are moving Chris and adding Extincts to the roster.
Our boy Rory, I feel bad for
him. I'm going to be moving him on, unfortunately, as you say. It's a bit of a shame, but they seem to...
He also works full-time. A was a stand-in, doesn't play CS regularly. B works full-time. And I remember when I spoke to him, he was like, I don't even know I can get time off work for it. Because he had to take a day off work for when they qualify for HLTV, and he pulled a sickie. He told them he was ill. You couldn't even get a day off work. And he was like, I've just started a job. I don't think I've even got annual leave yet, so I don't think I can actually even take it off. So I think it's two things in terms of he doesn't play competitive CS. If they want any chance of doing anything, he's gotta he doesn't play anymore. But also, I don't think he even could have gone because of I don't think he could have got time off work. So it happens.
Yeah,
Standing buff.
Anyway, true. I will say that I'm actually kind of excited by this group because you have like Bait, who have been there before and are going again after the last cycle in Rio. You've got teams like Gamer Legion and OG, who I think at this point are actually quite similar. OG are a bit again all over the place, and they might be ranked relatively high in the world, but ever since they lost Nexa again, it seems like they might be having some results every now and then, but they don't seem too consistent. Gamer Legion, as we spoke about earlier, sort of not the top of tier 2 anymore. They need to step up again. But we have teams that are involved which are very interesting, at least in RMR A, and of course we'll get on to B. But we've got Apex, who right now are on a bit of a streak. They are looking very, very good, of course, with JL, Kicksan, the new IGL of that team. I think Kicksan's been playing very well as just in genuine fragger, not just an IGL. I mean, they've won their last 3 series 2-0. Only lost recently, only bad loss really recently, coming up against Budapest 5, I would say, before really got started. And of course, you've got one win, the brand new roster with Boomich, Forrester, and Nickelback, and that is a team that we've seen quite a lot of recently. They're looking like they're slowly improving and getting better, which you'd expect for those names being on the roster. And finally, the French Hopes, the one and only French Hopes, of a full team, of course, in Falcons, and while they've been okay, I don't think they've been actually looking as good as like your one wins or your Apexes. So, I hope for Falcons' case they do well, but I really think they could be in for a struggle actually making it through.
The one shining hope of Falcons is every single player on this roster is LAN tenure.
True.
There's not a single weak link in that sense, and I think that when it comes down to pressure field matches like this, you see them in like these 2-2 situations, 1-2 situations. I think they have enough experience across the board to pull an Imperial potentially, where they just kind of get into the heads of these teams, like maybe your ITBs, maybe your Bates, Viperios, Saw, maybe even a BNE. I could see where they just like test them and test whether they have enough kind of metal and to stay within some of these BO3s. So I have like expectations that Falcons can stay within this. I am bummed that we don't have any other teams to kind of fight with that. I think Heat went 2-0 in the close qualifiers.
Yeah.
Collapsed 2-3. And of course, LDLC also had their struggles as well. We had actually a lot of French teams in the close qualifiers, but only Falcons actually converted. Yeah. So a lot rides on them, and I'm really hoping that we can see Kenny perform well enough on LAN so that it can translate to them going to
the
Paris.
big stage.
I think it'd be fun.
It'd just be a good little sign off in a way, because I don't think he's got much left in him in a way. I know he's still decent, but this is definitely obviously his last legs of his career. So yeah, no, I'd love to see him there. I don't know if it will happen. Being not even being UK biased, I genuinely could see ITB making it to the challenger stage. They're actually a very competent team who have been beating some decent teams, and also they got, I guess they kind of got good experience in a way, but then they've got kind of the best young rifle in the UK. Thomas is IGLing, but it's very loose style IGLing. All in all, I could see a world in which ITB. I think ITB have got a better chance than Viperio, in my opinion. Especially with Viperio not actually having a dedicated fifth. That definitely, adds to it in a way. But I don't know. It would be very, even to get to this stage for the UK boys, I mean, it's pretty nice. I don't know exactly, but we always make estimates about how much you get as sticker money. But isn't it like 1.5 mil or something like that split between the which is the reason why B&E still haven't got an org, because why would they get 1.5 mil every major cycle from stickers alone, so they don't need all of this org money, or orgs coming in and taking their money or whatever. There's no point, because no wages will make up for it.
About RMRB, by the way, I think that for me, this is actually the group that has the most upset potential in 100%. General. Because you have teams like NIP, Big, ENTS, Spirit, I would say all those 4, and Astralis. So it's 5 teams.
Yeah.
Astralis, Spirit, NIP, Ents, and Big. All perfect use of the English language. All susceptible to going down to teams like a 9, like an
500,
Fire, like a 500.
Yeah.
Like these teams that are involved here, like a Fours, even Aurora. We haven't seen them on LAN yet, but we have, but not with this particular 5.
Yeah.
Like I really think that this is an opportunity for those, 3 or 4 teams, especially 9 for me. I think 9 Aurora, 500, that group of 3, very, very interesting. They could put a lot of pressure on teams like Big, Ents. That group of 5 are in a scary sort of stage of their roster development where, like, they could easily fall out way too early and it'd be a huge disappointment. I think Ents having Nerds, of course, now does give them a buff without a shadow of a doubt. Mm-hmm. But again, that's still a new addition. We don't know how that's going to pan out. So, yeah, I'm actually concerned almost for those teams, considering
some good ones.
These
tier 2 boys are here to play.
And this is that kind of that juncture, right? Where if you want to make that jump up to tier 1.5, if you're 9, if you're Aurora, if you're 500, this is the time to do it. This is where you turn heads. This is where you cause some serious upsets. You qualify for the major here, and that's where you can kind of solidify yourself among the upper echelons, start attending a little bit more of these IEMs and whatnot. And it just gives a huge boost of confidence for some of these players to start making those close qualifiers regularly. I mean, you just saw it with Copenhagen Flames after they had their major run. Even when they were, I think it was between major runs, that they got a couple of invites. They started making it through close qualifiers a little bit more often. And I could see that happen with some of these rosters as well. So I think this is gonna be really exciting. This one for all the tier 2 boys, I think this Europe RMR B is going to be much more exciting, just because there is an actual chance for a lot of these squads, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think RMR B is going to be, I think, probably the most exciting to watch in terms of just because the storylines, because like you can definitely build ones, be like, fucking hell, boys, Aurora are pretty damn good. I can't lie. 500 are pretty good. Like 9 are also pretty good. Like, I mean, that one could have the most options. I got like Monty are actually looking pretty competent with some of their young as well. I mean, through the RMRs, they were actually like quite scary. And I think their form since then has been a little bit all over the place. But we kind of always see this. B and E are a classic. They always farm their way to the RMR. And then, in online tournaments and whatnot, they kind of save strats a little bit and always underperform. It's happened the last 2 majors, in fact. So, yeah, I don't know. For me, I think it's going to be, I don't know, very, very exciting in terms of the RMR itself. We'll kind of obviously probably come back to this closer to the time, I'm assuming. Probably a little bit, maybe like a week before or whatever. And actually go through and we can start doing, like the old pick'ems and arguments and whatnot. And all of the good stuffs. Yeah. And I'll probably do like the old leaderboard again. I'll get a wonderful graphics man on it. The mighty Kieran. To big old Ronnie get involved and get a nice little leaderboard going, and we can do a little like stupid diamond coin thing again and all of the likes.
Yeah, that would actually be fun doing that. Like, especially for the RMR as well. I think that put our money where our mouth is. I think
exactly. We'll get like Pigeon involved, and we'll get like all the boys, Yumi and whatnot, and get a little group going and do a little video about it, and kind of discuss through and whatnot. But yeah. Should be pretty good. I mean, any more on that, or are we happy to move on to Melbourne?
Move on to our qualifiers coming up.
Yeah, let's do. Oh, we missed one of them. Just a side note, I guess Asian qualifier. We didn't really touch on them.
Oh yes,
very quickly.
The Asia RMR, I think
Nolan Vision, which is kind of
has
a bummer.
2 spots, right?
Land Dodgers, honestly. Yes, 2 spots. Yeah. Both in the challengers. Yeah.
I think this has to be Rare Atom's time, but I do agree with you what you were saying before, that they have not looked, amazing. One, I think I see a shoe-in. Then it's sort of a toss-up between Greyhound and Rare Atom. I don't know which one to choose. And Keck W, we're going to see Lobajanika and Doc on LAN. Hell yeah.
Twisted minds.
Boys.
Yeah. Just saying, don't sleep on Eruption, is all I'm saying. They're good. They're
not bad, no.
They beat IHC in a 2-0 in IEM Brazil to start it off. Obviously, then IHC beat them back, obviously. But they're good. Like, I was actually quite impressed. They were playing normally when you look towards Asian Counter-Strike, it's very thick and fast. They're so puggy, some of those games. but they had like very good defaults, very good strats coming through. They were playing mind games with like big hitters like Limvision and IHC and Rare Atom. Actually, no, Rare Atom lost, in fact, to Team Renewal in the open quals for IEM Brazil. But this eruption side actually looked pretty competent. I could actually see a world in which they caused a couple upsets.
To get there. They beat NKT, which
yes,
is
Bentets. Yeah.
So I mean,
they're actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I can't lie. They're like I've been impressed with some of the CS I've seen from them. So I'm not putting them as a shoe in by any means, but I'm saying there's a world in which they could actually cause an upset here or there. Rare Atom look very shaky. I can't lie. I know they're flawless in groups in ECL right now, but their group is like so easy. I think the only good team, quote unquote, they've got is like GR Gaming, who are like a Russian team, but they're obviously like East Russian, so like over on that side. And then Wings Up look absolutely terrible at the moment. So they've actually got a pretty easy group, all things considered, from what I remember. But yeah, I actually think Rare Atom you need to keep an eye on because they actually could be a little bit shaky because they don't look amazing overall. Tyloo obviously, and not the Tyloo of old. Invictus Gaming, definitely not the Invictus Gaming.
I'm actually shocked they made it.
I'm so am I. Especially over Limvision.
Right, exactly.
But Limvision are land dodgers. Like they're actually like notorious right now. Everybody says it. Like locally, I was speaking to a friend of mine who's like he's from China, and he always just talks about how everybody just calls them land dodgers to a point where like there's like superstitions about it. Like they're actually just land dodgers. Wow. Like it's that big. Like they always get within one game, and that they farm all the way to within one game. And the second it comes to a qualification game, same thing happened with IEM Brazil. They farmed IEM Brazil and then lost the qualification game. And everyone was like, "What happened?" Like, so it's like a superstition that keeps getting like fuel to the fire because it's happened like every single tournament now. So and obviously they didn't play. What did they drop out of a conference? Right, well, what we did. And then Tyloo ended up playing instead. So, yeah, because Tyloo played against Illuminar. Tyloo were definitely not meant to be there.
No, it was Rare Atom, actually. Rare Atom was supposed to play conference.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And they got visa issues. Yeah. But
and they had a great best of 3 against MIBR, if you recall.
God damn it. I wish I didn't. And that one against Illuminar. Oh, no. That was Tyloo. That was
MIBR Illuminar or something like that. Or no, it was Tyloo Illuminar.
Tyloo Illuminar on Overpass. That'll permanently.
A game that will never happen again.
Yeah.
That you're very glad will never happen
That'll permanently scar me for probably the rest of my life. That was I've never been like so confused and furious at the same time. But yes, that's it. So we can axe off all of these and go on towards Dallas. And I guess we were kind of already sort of alluding to this, but I've got EG are the local hero invite. I think that's probably not a bad place to start in just a conversation. I think Trav, you did a pretty good tweet about this, right? Do you want to voice your tweet?
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty good.
I mean, it's kind of an interesting one, right? Because I said I think it goes without saying that EG being the local hero invite, and that just plainly that name is particularly amusing given recent events. Using Complexity as a local hero and adding another ESL World Ranking slot, or for me, actually, thinking back on it, I'd actually prefer a second North America closed qualifier spot rather than just one, I believe. I think that'd be a lot better. It would give a chance to maybe teams, like a Detonate perhaps, to maybe get a LAN appearance. But yeah, first event that's going to be post-major. It will be pretty fascinating. One thing that is kind of crazy to me as well is that Cloud9 are the previous winners of that event last year, and they've only been invited to the closed qualifiers, not the main event. So obviously, we have to take into account that they're not a partner team, which is probably one of the biggest reasons behind it. And I mean, actually, Tommy Lurpis actually replied to me only an hour ago and said EG is a partner team, but I'm not sure really what that necessarily means. He hasn't replied to me yet, so I'm not sure. I'm waiting for him to clarify. But like, if EG are a partner team, they should put them down as in the partner. Yeah,
they are a partner team, right? Because they're in Pro League, and the whole thing was like they've finished.
Yeah, exactly. So they should be in the partner team. Like, just the name should be partner team instead, rather than local hero. Give the local hero to someone else, a team that may actually truly benefit, rather than just EG,
local. If you're talking about local, right? Complexity is based in Dallas, so like I mean, it's
exactly.
Isn't Jason Lake doesn't he own the Cowboys? Isn't that his thing?
They play next to the Cowboys Stadium.
He owns it, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Right there.
So dumb. It makes no sense.
If they're gonna lie the other way around. Like, obviously it's not a lie, you know what I mean? But like, if they're gonna just switching it around makes a lot more sense. If EG are a partner team, put them in the partner team slot. It's like, oh, okay, EG are a partner team, whatever. That's why they're there.
Yeah.
Then Complexity, local hero. Of course they're the local heroes. It looks a lot better that that way around in the graphic than the other. And I don't
Their
understand why
owner
they do it
is
that way,
Mr.
but-
Dallas. Like, literally, it makes sense to make, like, even if they are a partner team, it actually makes sense in a way to call them the local hero team because he is.
I mean, they're literally playing in their like hometown.
And I'm
like,
right in saying he owns Dallas Cowboys. Like, that's like his thing, right?
Well,
Jake,
I don't think he owns.
or like,
the
the
Dallas
CEO or
Cowboys.
whatever, right?
But they have a partnership with the Dallas Cowboys. Like they bought Complexity out.
But no, but isn't Jason Lake saying that he is like the manager or the CEO of?
No.
I thought he was at the Cowboys, right? Wait,
No.
am I bugging out here?
Complexity.
Oh well, that's just not who.
Only of
Okay,
Complexity.
never mind. I was under the impression that he was like GM of the Cowboys or something.
No.
Oh right. Oh, like I thought he was upper management there, which is where he got all the money from. Okay, never mind.
Only Complexity, big boy. That is all.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Why EG there? Really, they are a partner team though. They're one of ESL's partner teams. Hence why they're always in Pro League. But there was the argument that I've already spoke about last time I made them my low light. But I made them a low light for performance back then, because when you bomb out dead last of 3 consecutive ESL Pro Leagues, your partnership status comes under review, and then they can decide whether they want to keep you on as a partner or not. And ESL decided to keep them on, which I think honestly now if they got given that decision again, they would probably say no and bring on Cloud9. I'm pretty sure, because Cloud9 have more than enough money, and I'm 99% sure Cloud9 would want that partnership. They would take it. So yeah, I don't know. It feels weird to me. Go on.
I have a question for both of you actually. See in the tweet it says TBA eyes emoji. Look at the team list. The closed qualifier has OG, Fnatic, Cloud9, and Spirit invited. Who can you think of a team on the top of your head that would be the TBA right now?
I need to honestly.
Did you say Fnatic?
You say Fnatic? You say yeah, you did say right. Fnatic.
Fnatic are in closed qual invited.
Is that not? Nah. Well, Na'Vi aren't there, right?
I know they have like notorious visa issues, so it might not be Na'Vi, but
what Vitality? Vitality in the closed quals.
Vitality's not there.
Hey, what about Vitality then?
Apparently, Na'Vi and Vitality have turned it down, or at least Vitality have turned it down.
Oh, they have.
So this is my thing, right? I had this issue that I brought up previously, because both of these teams are playing the Washington finals as well, which is literally the week after. So in my head, I don't even think it's like a travel issue, because I mean they're gonna fly to the NA anyways.
Yeah.
They'll be used to the time zones as well. I think DC will only be an hour or two ahead of DC time, so it's not much at all. And I think you want to even treat Dallas as like a warm-up event. You could do that as well. But look, man, I think about this event and kind of the ramifications of the Grand Slam, because FaZe is still only 1 slot away, and G2 can amass another notch with EPL. And this could kind of be like their last hurrah, the slam dunk that they need to kind of go close with FaZe. And if you're not attending that, if you're not trying to stop that from happening, I think that's kind of worrying. I don't necessarily like that teams are skipping events just because the lands are so less this time around.
Imagine if we get G2 on 3 and FaZe on 3 and they meet in a final of an IEM event.
What a story!
So hype, you know?
You get bonus money as well for denying someone the Grand Slam, right? So it would be like a double whammy. That would be insane.
Oh my god,
man!
But anyway, that's why I was just confused, because they got a TBA. Do you think they're like waiting, like to maybe nearer the time of the event, see if Vitality or Na'Vi, maybe if they're comfortable playing, like in as you say, because they've got Washington too. It's waiting nearer the time to see how they are, like in terms of just comfortability reasons. Because I don't see
what about NIP
TBA when you have cloud.
That's not bad.
Maybe that's a good call.
It feels like a NIP sort of event just to rock up to, and don't do anything, finish 8th, and everyone forgets about them.
It's like NIP Oakland, but I know I agree with you, because I was just looking at it, like seeing the closed qualifier, OG, Fnatic, Cloud9, Spirit, then looking at this, seeing the teams there, thinking who on earth could be a TBA that's actually relevant. NIP is the only one I can think of, so thank you for bring that one up. So,
it's the only one I can think maybe that could, like, I mean, if they threw like big in there, I'd be fuming. But like, NIP seems to make the most sense. Is it confirmed then that Vitality said no?
I actually don't know, but that's what I heard a rumor that could be
Oh.
Vitality just said no.
That's-
Because who else said no? Because MLBR said no to Melbourne, right? So
Yeah,
people are saying
I've
no
got
to
that open
events 'cause of
actually.
these things.
We
Oh,
can
do
come
you
to that
really?
a bit.
Okay.
Come
Do
to
you
that a
wanna
bit later.
Do you want to move on?
Honestly, we can talk about it right now. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go to Melbourne. Yeah.
All right, so obviously I'll get the Melbourne up generally speaking first. So we've got kind of the 4 teams that are invited to Melbourne itself are Complexity, IHC, B&E, and Greyhound. I don't think there's any qualms at all. They're pretty good to me. Complexity, like, good to see them there. Because of this sort of tier of event where we're now saying that, like, I mean, even you can make an argument that Complexity may be even quote unquote too good to be there. But I think it's similar in a way to seeing how we had OG there last time, because OG were on paper like quote unquote too good to be there on paper. Obviously, in performance, definitely wasn't the case when they ended up losing to Wings Up on Ancient. But I think overall, these invite teams, I got no problems with. I think they're all pretty good. IHC, of course, expected. Greyhound, of course, expected. And then B&E Complexity, I don't mind those 2 going there. So I'm a fan of it.
This gives a chance for Complexity to actually win something, right?
True.
Exactly. I feel like
Yeah.
Complexity, IHC, and B&E can all win this event. 100%.
Yeah.
I basically tweeted out my thoughts about this, but it was essentially that this is the chance for Complexity to become an elite team and like start to be in that upper echelon conversation. It's the chance for IHC to kind of prove that Katowice wasn't a fluke, and that they can actually be considered a tier 1 team, which is very hard to do, and this is one of the perfect stepping stones to do so. B&E want to finally get a LAN trophy after getting very close against Eternal Fire with Devil Walk. And then, of course, Greyhound is always super exciting to watch, and Rod Laver, because, I mean, last time around, it was just really fun to just see how loud and rambunctious the Australians would get.
It was fun.
Crowd.
Yeah, it was very fun. And then, of course, we've got the close quals, and probably we'll start with EU, because it's stacked, in all fairness. So
yeah, I was just looking at it. There's one spot for these 8.
For Aurora, Fours, Sprout, Cough, Apex, Copenhagen Flames, Cough, 1 win, Honorous, Cough, Ecstatic, Cough. But they made it for the open quals, so I can't really shit too much on Honorous and Ecstatic. But yeah, there's one spot from 8 of these teams, from Aurora, Fours. Realistically, Aurora and Fours are probably the 2 heavy favorites. Sprout, let's be honest, I can't see a world in which, if they're playing with Berry, they make it. Apex, like you said, the recent run of form has been unbelievable, so I can answer that. One winner looking good as well.
Honestly, any one of Honorous has already played LAN at CCT.
Yeah.
Any one of Aurora, Apex, Copenhagen Flames, or 1 win. Those 4. I mean, like Copenhagen Flames, of course, we know they can step up still. Like they might be poor, but after last year, they can still step up. Any one of those 4. Seeing them on LAN, I would very, very much be enjoying that.
I would drop Fours in there. I think Fours are actually pretty competent still. Like, they finished 3rd overall in ECL season 43. I think they've been a little bit rougher this time out, but they're still in it, I'm pretty sure. I think actually they might even still be in the upper bracket. But I would throw Fours out there, just because I don't actually think they're that bad. And you gotta love Jerry, right? Basically, he's just the best person. And they do a lot of content at Melbourne, and that means a lot of Jerry screen time, because he's the only one who speaks English. So that means we get to see Jerry on the cam a lot, which is absolute W, because he is the best person in the world to speak to. So yeah, for me, any of Aurora, Fours, Apex, Flames, or 1 win, I'd be happy with. If Sprout, Honorous, or Ecstatic make it, I'd be quite disappointed, because it just feels like a waste of a spot. But that seems to me very stacked. And then, of course, NA, I guess, Annie, you can be our resident specialist here. But again, I got to say, we don't have any information on it. So, I mean, I don't know what you know about how things are working in the open quals.
So it's really tough, right? Because we don't have many teams that can play it.
Yeah.
Because ATK is our front runner, and they are going to be at Malta for Pro League. Their group in EPL kind of coincides with the North America Close Qualifier, which kind of sucks.
Right. Okay.
So they won't be there. I believe Nouns and Strife are the invited teams, unless I'm mixing that with Dallas.
I don't see any here though, so you might be talking about Dallas potentially.
Okay,
yeah. I don't see them here.
I think we're still gonna have to just wait for our open qualifiers to conduct, but I don't think we even have any open invites for close qualifiers just yet. We're pretty much up in the air.
Fair.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I believe that was Dallas, by the way. Nouns and Strife are in Dallas. I just checked.
Which is also very, very tough. But Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, we don't do so much on them. Oceania, I mean, probably Rooster, I think, is like the best team outside of Greyhound at the moment. I think they've been imploding left, right, and center. So I think probably Rooster's the only one that's like still actually together. But Asia's actually looking kind of cool. It's Rare Atom, Tyloo, Lim Vision, Eruption. One spot from them. Obviously last time Wings Up, like, you know, everyone fell in love with them because of like their upset over OG, which is probably I would say is the second best upset of last year, aside from Endpoint beating Na'Vi in EPL. But I think that's pretty stacked. I mean, any of those four I'd actually be happy with. Even Eruption if they made it. I actually quite like the CS Eruption are playing. So any of Rare Atom, Tyloo, Lim Vision, or Eruption making it would actually be very cool to watch. And cool to maybe get them a little bit more LAN experience, especially anyone outside of Rare Atom who probably hasn't had as much. It'd be kind of sick to see those guys on LAN. Because that Tyloo team is kind of back from the dead, basically. They kind of come out of nowhere again and started fighting. But I don't know. It looks quite exciting. Both Dallas and Melbourne are looking really like stacked.
I'm excited for it. I think even the qualifiers I'm excited for because like the fact that the EU closed qual is going to have Cloud9 and Fnatic in just like already, you know, it makes it very tasty looking, doesn't it? So,
exactly.
Yeah.
I think this will be like my first like in-person LAN that I'll be going to. It's like maybe a couple hours away from here, so I'm very much looking forward to attending.
Get on the sesh.
Weekend.
Can't go wrong. What's the arena like?
Jump up on the stage.
I've heard it's really nice. It's I had a couple of friends that went last year, and they said that it was just a very nice experience in and out of the server. So,
is it big or is it like a little bit more that homey kind of thing?
It's pretty intimate, I'd say. I mean,
that's
I don't think
better though. That's better.
They've not booked out the entire arena, but the segment that they have booked out is like always full, and I think that's just the most important part. As long as that environment is still going,
I think that's better in my opinion. Anyway, I think like I think sometimes you can have these massive arenas for not massive events, and it very much like underplays it in a way. Like when you see empty seats, and you're like, oh, you know, it's very easy to jibe on in a way. I think the only thing we left to talk about is MIBR declining the invite. So I mean, did anyone ever kind of like their thoughts on this? I mean, to start off, I kind of fully understand it, to be honest. They were kind of talking about the flights and stuff, and it kind of makes sense. After
OG's collapse at Melbourne last year, I think a lot of teams have just realized that there's a huge risk taking the Melbourne invite because, I mean, if you go play the tournament and you lose, you have now burned so much energy for this one tournament and you failed to win it. And that is just super heartbreaking, I think. And you could see the kind of exactly. You could see the ramifications of, I mean, OG never looked the same ever since. I mean, that was their kind of uptick in form before they went to Melbourne, and that was supposed to be the kind of event that propelled them. But ever since that event, they kind of just looked very average and muted in a lot of ways. And it's hard because of how fast-paced our calendar is, that if you take that risk, again, you're going to have to fly immediately out to another event. And if you're a team like MIBR, who is also a partner team, you're probably going to have an ESL event to attend pretty soon after. And you might miss the qualifiers to qualify for those events too. So I don't even blame them for making this decision at all.
It was what, a 23-hour flight they were saying, something like that. I think in the article by Dusty, so like they laid out the team's reasoning, citing a 23-hour flight and dramatic time zone shift from IEM Rio, the tournament directly before Challenger Melbourne. And do you know what? Honestly, I kind of fully understand it. Like you said, like we kind of saw that OG is a good example, but then again, the two Brazilian teams were the two finalists at last Melbourne, and they were the two best performing consistently in the last one. So I don't know, like I feel like obviously MIBR turned it down, but both the Brazilian teams were the two best by a landslide in towards last Melbourne. So, and obviously Payne walked away with a good victory there, and everyone, you know, kind of jumped to that bandwagon for a little bit until then. They've now had, you know, all the changes coming through with PKL and whatnot. But yeah, I can understand it, but I also thought like maybe he's missing an opportunity just because Payne and Imperial did quite well last time.
Yeah.
But, you know, it is what it is. It happens. I think aside from that, boys, we're kind of getting towards the sort of the end of things. Really, I do have a funny clip. Obviously, this is like already done a little bit of the rounds already, but it's so worth watching just because it was very funny. So for context, so I'll pause it here and bring it back. So for context, this last weekend was Epic LAN in the UK, and it's like a kind of it's one of two LANs that we have on a regular basis in the UK. We have this one and Insomnia. Insomnia is more of an event in terms of it's more for the stalls and the cosplaying and whatever. Where for Epic LAN, it's actually more about the CS:GO. Like there's no stalls or anything. You go there, bring your own PC, you just play Counter-Strike. That's it. I guess in a way like a very, very small version of Fragadelphia, where you purely go there, play CS:GO, and that's it. And there's like there's like a little stage and whatever. And for pretty much all the CS players in the UK, it's like a kind of a must attend kind of thing. And I would have gone and watched, or like I actually had a hotel booked, and I booked my train and stuff until I got asked to cast Blast South America, which was finishing at 3 a.m. So I was never going to make it in time. But the plan was always to go, just because it's always a good old vibe. But there was a good clip. This is in the Inters tournament. The Inters tournament is those who... so day one, which is the Friday. So you arrive on Thursday, set yourself up. Friday is day one of the competition, and you play loads of best of ones all throughout the day. And you have to get out your groups. There's like 8 teams per group or whatever. And if you don't make it out of groups and go on towards playoffs, then that's where you're in for like the prize money. I think that the prize money is only like 4.5k or something like that at the end. It's actually not bad. But if you don't make it out of groups for the actual big tournament, you drop into another slow tier tournament where it's like very for fun. So last time out, we had a big storyline where midway through the Inters tournament, like at like half time or whatever, both of the two teams met up at the bar and did Jaeger bombs, and then went back into the second half. So the Inters tournament is very fun. It's very good. Like when I played it, I just used an XM the entire Inters tournament, which was very, very good fun. But this one, we had a pretty good one. This is on Pro League, so I'll play it now. So this was on actual Pro League, which makes it even funnier, and I'll let the clip play out. So
reports coming out of Kettering, UK right now about Epic LAN. It seems as though there's been a bit of a mishap over there. UK once again showing their prowess within Counter-Strike Global Offensive.
Nice try, Fresh. Nice try. Oh my god, he didn't go off it. If he won it.
So this is Brown have been quoted saying, "Don't be a loser, buy a diffuser, or mess around and find out." One source told us by the name of Henry G, quote, "What a blunder," end quote. Now again, this all coming to us just right now, live and in the flesh from Kettering. We're going to keep our eyes on the developing situation on the ground. This is Trace from Space in Malta.
very, very good. Good to see UK CS has made Pro League. I don't know if you guys saw.
So happy.
Go on.
What makes me so happy is when Stunner says Epic LAN, it's like he's got no idea what he's saying. Or
no idea
what's coming up. Like,
yeah.
Bless him. Bless his
From
socks.
Kettering,
So
Epic LAN.
funny.
He's never heard of Kettering as a town. I mean, people in the UK haven't heard of Kettering. If you don't play CS, most people in the UK would not know where Kettering is at all. I don't think it even classes as a city. I think it's literally a town. Like, it's got about 7 shops. But it's got a big old conference center. But for context, yeah, so that was obviously in overtime. I don't know if you can see because it's kind of pixelated, but it was overtime. It was 18-16 to the T side, and a guy called Fate. It was 1 versus 2 against a guy called Fresh, who was the T. Fate kills him, goes to defuse, and he leans back as he's defusing to shout to Fresh, who is on Sasha's team, who's the clips from, saying, "You're getting dropped," basically, because just say he's getting dropped from the team. As he leans over, he hits the right arrow key, which for some reason he has unbound. So he gets off the bomb and he doesn't have a kit, even though it's overtime as well. He doesn't have a kit, and they lose the game. And it's a best of ones. That was it. So they ended up lost, and they got grouped in Inters as well, which is even funnier. So you get double grouped. But hilarious clip, and funny to see, and a bit of lore as well about that clip to make it even funnier. They spoke about it at Pro League, obviously, as we just seen, but they spoke about it after the show was done at the end of the day, where they brought Fnatic on the desk and have a little conversation. And Mezzy, our pride and joy of the UK, was like, "Oh yeah, my brother's on the team that threw. His brother was playing for the team that ended up losing because of the shit talking." And it's just brilliant, like a full circle moment there. But oh man, it just makes me laugh. It's so funny. And the fact that I got to UKC and like XQC watched it on stream as well.
Yeah.
And like every single YouTube, like Vladapod and Sin TV and all of those guys, highlight channels, every single one had it in. Like it actually blew up. It went all over Reddit. But funny to see, like, it was like a random UK thing, and like, every news outlet picked it up as well, like all of them, apart from like HLTV, but like every kind of domestic one did their own version of it. Very funny, just funny to see.
Good stuff.
That's very good. I have one little bit of breaking news before we do go, before we say our goodbyes and we move on. They have just announced the invites to the Blast Premier East qualifiers. And I thought it's probably actually worth talking about because there's actually some pretty decent teams there. So I'll link it to you boys just because this came out kind of already while we've been going, but I'll get it up on stream as well. So they announced this as of, an hour ago or whatever, or something like that along those lines. But invited teams. Group A, it's not Group B. Group B, Eternal Fire, Voivoda, B&E and iNation. Group A, Rapid Ninjas, Monty, Aurora and Cloud9. So of course, winner of this goes to Blast Premier EU quals, and then through them they can go to Blast Premier Spring. But that is stacked for essentially like a low tier qual. That is unbelievable.
I didn't know Eternal 5 or Voivoda and B&E were in it. I only knew that Cloud9 and Aurora were in it. I didn't know about the others.
Yeah,
so.
it is.
Yeah,
that is a stacked. And of course, and then the qualifiers was Monty, Rapid Ninjas, iNation and Voivoda. So I mean, but invite teams: B&E, Eternal Fire, Aurora, Cloud9. Now that is pretty stacked. It's pretty damn good.
Well, it doesn't matter because it's Cloud9's favorite environment. So online.
They are gonna time to farm. Time to farm for them. I mean, they are obviously the heavy favorites. You got to feel for Aurora. If it was like anybody else, Aurora make it through. Probably like no problems.
Yeah,
maybe it's enough.
Out.
Yeah. Cloud9 should absolutely farm that. So it should be pretty good for them. But I think, ladies and gents, that more or less sums it up. We are kind of done and dusted. Lads, what are you up to for the next... I guess we've probably got like 2 weeks maybe until we do another one of these. Probably we'll do it prior to the RMR. And of course, I'm going on holiday kind of before then. So prior to I go on holiday, so we can get like one more episode out before the major. So what are you doing in the next 2 weeks?
Well, it's basically qualifier season. I mean, for the time being, I suppose. And Trav and I will probably be doing the Dallas South America qualifier. That'll be really exciting to have another iteration of the 2.5 talent.
There we
grace
go.
your screens. We had Neo and Trav. This time will be Trav and I.
There we go.
But look out for that. Yeah. And then we still don't have any word on Melbourne close qualifiers, but that'll also. Well, I'm assuming at least one of us will be.
It's a week away, surely, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Surely we hear something soon.
We've got a lot of just. I think we're just ramping up in terms of the kind of work that we have to do in the coming month or so. So I'm just looking forward to kind of getting back into the saddle again because it's been a little quiet for a little while.
What I will say is that apart from that, as I said, because we don't know about Melbourne quals yet, I am planning, to keep an eye on any hot matches that are going to be in the 2 EU Open quals for Dallas. So they're on the 11th, the 11th and 12th, and the 22nd and 23rd, the 2 EU Open qualifiers for Dallas. So. If there are hot matches there, you'll see my name on HLTV, and you will see me covering those. Whether it's maybe be with one of you two, because often we do a couple of watch parties for those. So
yeah, exactly.
We shall see.
I'm also getting back into the content thing again.
There we go.
I am making a Buster Inters comparison video just after their recent success at EPL, so look for that. Probably going to be bringing back Rescope in the near couple of weeks, so if you guys are a fan of that, definitely look out for that. And then Neo and I are planning something with a couple other folks as well to do another podcast. So look out for that. We're still kind of in the planning stages of it, but that might be pretty exciting. I don't know if we'll have it out by the next podcast.
Who knows? Who knows?
There's a possibility.
Yeah. I guess for me, I'm looking at my calendar now. This week's actually my free week, which is quite nice. I'm on a little break. I've been like kind of busy-ish. And my sleep schedule has been been a bit busy.
Ish, you've been doing every single fucking ESL gig that's been available for both of us, and you've been nabbing them from all. Oh, I'm leaving.
Nabbing them isn't one way of putting it. But no, obviously I had the kind of blast SA thing, so my sleep schedule's been absolutely messed up. So I've been kind of rein that back in. And then next week, I'm doing a bit of EU ECL, which is pretty good. I'm going to be, I don't think it's been announced yet, but I think I can probably mention I'm going to be involved in Impact. So I'll be involved in ESL Impact this season. And I'm going to be doing South America for the vast majority of it with someone called Donna, who apparently is pretty good. I've never worked with her, never met her. So that'll be interesting.
Is that the one and only Donna Spock, who's partnered with Nexa? Is that the one?
Oh, is it? I honestly, I don't know. I don't know. But
that sounds like Nexa's partner to me.
Okay,
so.
well there we go. I might ask her if she can put me in an interview with Nexa. Who knows? And then doing that. And then of course next weekend I'm doing that Blast qualifier with Cloud9 and Aurora and whatnot, which should be pretty good fun. So that'll be sick. So look out on, I think it's on Blast TV, and that'll be whenever it is. But that'd be pretty sick. And I'll be alongside Scriv for that one. Then the week after that, a bit more Impact, and then I'm doing Blast Nordics, so some of the Nordic ones. I don't know. I was actually thinking whether Astralis would be involved in that. I don't know if they actually get direct. I don't think they're direct to. Are they direct to Blast? I don't know. I don't think they are. Right? They're not a direct Blast team. So Astralis might be in the closed quals, which is actually kind of cool to watch. But yeah, so a couple of Blast things, a couple of ESL things, not bad. Maybe some Melbourne as well. I won't be doing Dallas because I'm going to be in Portugal on a lads holiday, so we'll take a break. We'll take a break and let Traladin do their thing. But yeah, aside from that, we're done and dusted. Thank you very much, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you're watching us on Twitch, thank you for joining us. If you're watching us on YouTube, we do also stream these all the time whenever we do them now. However, there's no set schedule because we just do it whenever we're free. So, of course, you're going to have to follow us on Twitter. You see our @s below our heads. They're linked below as well. That's when you can find out when we're going live. We normally try and give at least kind of 10, 15 minutes notice, but, it's what it is. But, yes, we are... Thank you for watching, joining. Make sure to follow the boys as well. You see the @s below. Appreciate all the support. It's been good. For now, though, thank you. Take care. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you all very, very soon. Peace out. Lots of love. Subscribe, like, all the good stuff.
Love
see you
you
soon. Bye-bye.